Story 1. My wife hurled my clothes down the stairs, screaming, "How dare you disrespect my family?" When I pointed out her brother had been living rent-free in our home for 19 months without contributing a dollar, she slapped me and snarled, "Get out, this is my house too." I just nodded, packed a single bag, and left without arguing. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, she called sobbing that the electricity had been shut off, the mortgage was overdue, and her brother had stolen her credit cards, finally discovering what life is really like without me. The shirts hit the landing first, then my jeans came tumbling after them in a heap. My favorite jacket, the leather one I'd saved 6 months to buy, landed draped over the banister like some defeated flag of surrender. "How dare you?" Jessica's voice cracked as she hurled another armful down from the bedroom. "How dare you disrespect my family?" I stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching socks and underwear rain down around me. 19 months. That's how long her brother Marcus had been sleeping in our guest room, eating our food, using our utilities, and contributing exactly nothing to the household expenses. 19 months of me biting my tongue. "Jess, I just said that maybe Marcus could start looking for..." "Looking for what?" She appeared at the top of the stairs, her face flushed red. "A job? You think it's that easy? He's going through something." He'd been going through something since the day he showed up with 2 garbage bags of clothes and a story about his roommate kicking him out. The something he was going through, as far as I could tell, involved playing video games until 4 in the morning and leaving dishes in the sink for me to clean when I got home from work. "I'm not trying to be harsh," I said, keeping my voice level. "But it's been over a year and a half. We've got bills piling up. The mortgage payment went up after the rate adjustment, and we're barely... This is my house too." Jessica descended 3 steps, her finger jabbing toward me. "I get a say in who lives here." "I know that. I'm just asking if we can at least talk about a timeline." The slap came out of nowhere. My cheek stung, and for a moment, we both stood frozen. Her hand was still raised, trembling slightly. I could see the shock in her eyes mixing with something else, defiance, maybe, or the desperate need to not back down. "Get out," she whispered. I touched my face, feeling the heat spreading across my skin. In 7 years of marriage, she'd never raised a hand to me. We'd had arguments, sure. Disagreements about money, about her family, about whether we were ready for kids. But never this. "Jess, get out." Her voice rose to a scream. "Just get out." I picked up the bag that had already been packed with my gym clothes. The rest of my belongings could wait. I walked past the pile of my life scattered across the stairs and headed for the door. "That's right, run away," she shouted after me. "Just like you always do when things get hard." I didn't respond. The door clicked shut behind me, and I stood on the porch of the house I'd been paying for since we bought it 6 years ago. My truck sat in the driveway, and beyond it, I could see Marcus's beat-up Honda with the expired registration tags. The evening air felt cold against my burning cheek. I drove to a motel near the highway, the kind with weekly rates and a flickering neon sign. The clerk barely looked up as he slid the key card across the counter. Room 217 smelled like stale cigarette smoke and cleaning chemicals, but the bed was made and the lock worked. That was enough. I sat on the edge of the mattress and pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from Jessica already. I set it face down on the nightstand and stared at the painting bolted to the wall, a generic landscape of mountains that probably didn't exist anywhere. The thing nobody tells you about the moment your marriage implodes is how quiet it gets afterward. No more TV sounds from the living room. No footsteps overhead. Just the hum of the air conditioning unit and the occasional rumble of traffic from the highway. I'd met Jessica at a friend's barbecue 9 years ago. She was laughing at something, her head thrown back, completely unself-conscious. When she smiled at me, I felt something shift in my chest. We were engaged within a year. Her family had been part of the package. Her mother called every Sunday. Her father liked to give unsolicited advice about retirement planning. And Marcus, younger by 5 years, had always been the baby, the one who needed looking after. At first, I'd liked him. He was funny, quick with a joke, always the life of the party. But somewhere along the way, being the life of the party became his only skill. Jobs came and went. Apartments never lasted more than a few months. And when things fell apart, Jessica always swooped in to save him. "He just needs time to figure things out," she'd said when he first moved in. Just a few weeks, maybe a month. The weeks became months. The months stretched past a year. And every time I brought it up, Jessica's defenses went up like a wall. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. I turned it over. Another call from Jessica. I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, I drove to work with my shirt from yesterday and a face that probably looked as rough as I felt. Dale, my supervisor, took one look at me and raised an eyebrow. "Rough night?" "Something like that." He didn't push, which I appreciated. The factory floor was loud enough that I didn't have to think much, Just focus on the machines, the rhythm of the work, the repetitive motions that kept my hands busy and my mind blessedly empty. During lunch break, I finally listened to Jessica's voicemails. The first one was angry, accusing me of being dramatic. The second was defensive, explaining why I was wrong about everything. The third was calmer, asking me to come home so we could talk. I deleted all three and called my sister instead. You left? Rachel's voice went up an octave. Like, actually left? She hit me, Rach. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, are you okay? I'm at a motel. I just needed to hear a friendly voice. Come stay with us, she said immediately. Brian won't mind. We've got the spare room since Tyler went to college. I don't want to impose. You're my brother. Get your butt over here tonight. Rachel and Brian lived 40 minutes away in a subdivision with neat lawns and basketball hoops in every driveway. Their guest room had a double bed with a blue comforter and photos of their kids on the dresser. It felt like a sanctuary. Does Jessica know you're here? Rachel asked, handing me a cup of coffee. I haven't told her. She's been calling me. Rachel sat across from me at the kitchen table. 5 times today. What did you tell her? That I didn't know where you were. She paused. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. The truth was, I'd spent the last 19 months in a slow boil, watching my marriage erode one unpaid bill at a time. Jessica worked part-time at a dental office, 20 hours a week. Her paycheck covered groceries and her car payment. Everything else, the mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes, came out of my account. I'd tried to talk to her about money before. Every conversation ended the same way, with her getting defensive and me backing down to keep the peace. But the peace had been a lie. We'd been treading water, and I was the only one swimming. You need to protect yourself, Rachel said. Talk to a lawyer. Figure out your options. I don't want a divorce. Maybe not. But you need to know where you stand. Brian came home from work and greeted me with a firm handshake and a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. Over dinner, lasagna that Rachel had made from scratch, they didn't pry. We talked about Brian's job at the engineering firm, about Tyler's classes at State University, about everything except the elephant in the room. After dinner, I sat in the backyard and watched the sun set behind the fence. My phone buzzed with another call from Jessica. This time, I answered. Where are you? Her voice was tight, controlled. I'm safe. That's all you need to know right now. We need to talk about this. You can't just leave. You told me to get out. I was upset. You were attacking Marcus. I asked if he could contribute to the bills. My jaw tightened. That's not an attack. That's a reasonable request after 19 months. He's family. So am I. Or I was supposed to be. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Come home, she said finally. Please. We'll figure something out. Did Marcus get a job? Another pause. He's looking. That's not an answer. Why are you being like this? Her voice cracked. You're not this person. You're kind. You're patient. I'm tired, Jess. I'm tired of working 50 hours a week and coming home to a sink full of dishes that aren't mine. I'm tired of lying awake at night doing math in my head, trying to figure out how we're going to make the mortgage payment. I'm tired of being told I'm the problem when I'm the only one holding things together. That's not fair. You hit me. The words hung in the air between us. You threw my clothes down the stairs and you hit me in the face. And you haven't apologized once. Silence. I need time, I said. I need space to think. How much time? I don't know. I hung up before she could respond. The first week passed in a blur. I went to work, came back to Rachel's house, ate dinner with them, and spent my evenings watching TV shows I didn't care about. Rachel gave me space but checked in regularly, making sure I was eating, making sure I wasn't drowning in my own head. Jessica called every day, sometimes multiple times. I started sending her texts instead of talking, short, factual responses that didn't invite argument. Yes, I was fine. No, I wasn't ready to come back yet. No, I hadn't made any decisions about the future. On day 8, she sent me a photo of the mortgage statement. The payment was due in 6 days. I can't cover this on my own, her text read. Please. I stared at the number. $3,400. It was my paycheck for 2 weeks of work, minus taxes. Money I'd already earned, already allocated to bills before any of this happened. I could let it go unpaid. Let her scramble. Let her feel the weight of what I'd been carrying alone. But the house was in both our names. A missed payment would hurt my credit just as much as hers. And despite everything, I wasn't interested in burning my own life down out of spite. I transferred the money. Thank you, she texted back. Then, a minute later, can we talk now? Not yet. During week 2, I found a 1-bedroom apartment listed for rent online. It was small, older, but clean and affordable. The landlord agreed to let me move in with just first month's rent while my credit check processed. I signed the lease that afternoon. Moving my belongings out of the house was going to be a problem. I couldn't exactly show up with a truck while Jessica was home. I texted her, "I need to get my things. When's a good time?" Her response came an hour later, "I'll be at Mom's on Saturday morning." Saturday arrived cold and gray. I borrowed Brian's truck and drove to the house with Rachel riding shotgun for moral support. The neighborhood looked the same, kids on bikes, someone mowing their lawn despite the chill. Our house sat quiet, Jessica's car gone from the driveway. Marcus's Honda was still there. "You want me to come in?" Rachel asked. "Probably better if you don't." I let myself in with my key. The living room looked exactly as I'd left it, except messier. Fast food bags littered the coffee table. A stack of mail had piled up on the kitchen counter, unopened. Dishes filled the sink, some with visible mold growing on them. I started in the bedroom, packing my clothes into boxes I'd brought. My books from the nightstand. The watch my grandfather had given me. Photos from before the marriage started unraveling. I was loading the third box into the truck when Marcus appeared in the doorway, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. He squinted at me through the morning light. "Didn't know you were coming by." I texted Jessica. "Yeah, well." He shrugged. She didn't mention it. I brushed past him with another box. He followed me outside, hands shoved in his pockets. "Look, man, about what happened?" "Not interested," I said, loading the box into the truck bed. "I'm just saying, it got out of hand. Jess feels bad about it." "Does she?" I turned to face him. "Because she hasn't said that to me." Marcus looked away, uncomfortable. "She's proud, you know? Doesn't like admitting when she's wrong. Funny how that works when I'm the one paying for everything." His face hardened. "That's what this is about? Money?" "No. It's about respect. Something you wouldn't know much about." I went back inside before he could respond. The guest room, Marcus's room, was exactly what I'd expected. Clothes everywhere, energy drink cans lined up on the windowsill, the unmistakable smell of someone who'd stopped caring about basic hygiene. A stack of collection notices sat on the dresser, bills with his name on them that he'd clearly been ignoring. I took what was mine from the main areas of the house. My tools from the garage. My laptop from the home office. The coffee maker I'd bought before we were married. Each trip to the truck felt like peeling away another layer of a life I'd built, leaving behind only the skeleton. Rachel helped me unload everything at my new apartment. The space felt cavernous and empty with just my few belongings scattered around. But it was mine. Clean. Quiet. Free from the constant weight of resentment and obligation. "You going to be okay here?" Rachel asked, looking around the bare living room. "Yeah. I think so." She hugged me before she left. "Call if you need anything." "I mean it." That night, I ate takeout Chinese food sitting on my floor since I didn't have a table yet. The silence was almost oppressive, but beneath it, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, a sense of control. Not over Jessica, not over the situation, but over my own choices and my own space. Week 3 began with a call from Jessica's mother, Linda. "I raised you better than this," she said without preamble. "Hello to you too, Linda. Walking out on your wife when she needs you? When her brother is going through a difficult time. Did Jessica tell you she hit me?" Silence. Then, people say things they don't mean when they're upset. I didn't say she said something. I said she hit me. Across the face. After throwing my belongings down the stairs. More silence. "Marriage is about working through problems," Linda said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "Not running away." I agree. But it's also about partnership. About both people pulling their weight. About respect. Marcus is family. So am I. Or was I not family? Did those vows not count for anything? Linda didn't have an answer for that. The call ended shortly after, leaving me staring at my phone and wondering how many more of these confrontations I'd have to weather. The bills started coming due. I kept my part of the bargain, transferring money for the mortgage, for the utilities I was still listed on. But I didn't send anything extra. Jessica's texts became more frequent, more desperate. The water heater broke. It's going to cost $800 to replace. Netflix got shut off. Internet is due tomorrow. I'm short $120. Each message was a test, a way to see if I'd crack, if I'd fall back into the pattern of solving every problem while she coasted. I responded to the critical ones, the water heater, yes, because a broken water heater would damage the house. The Netflix subscription? She could figure that out on her own. On day 20, she called me at work. Dale gestured that I could take it outside, probably reading the tension in my face. "What's wrong?" I answered, stepping into the parking lot. "Nothing's wrong. She paused. "I miss you." The words hit harder than I expected. Despite everything, despite the anger and frustration and bone-deep exhaustion, part of me missed her too. Missed the woman I'd married, the one who'd laughed at that barbecue 9 years ago. Jess, I know I messed up. I know I said things, did things I shouldn't have. Can we please just meet somewhere and talk? Really talk? I leaned against the building, closing my eyes against the afternoon sun. Has anything changed? What do you mean? Is Marcus still living there? A beat of hesitation. Yes, but has he gotten a job? Has he contributed anything to the household? He's been trying. That's not what I asked. You're being unreasonable. The familiar defensiveness crept back into her voice. He's going through something. Why can't you understand that? I understand fine. What I don't understand is why his problems became my responsibility. Why his inability to function as an adult means I have to work myself into the ground to support him. He's my brother. And I'm your husband. The words came out louder than I intended. A coworker getting into their car glanced over. I lowered my voice. At least, I thought I was. But you've made it pretty clear where your priorities are. She was crying now, soft sobs that once would have broken me, would have sent me running back to fix everything. Please don't do this. Please don't give up on us. I'm not giving up. I'm just not coming back to the same situation I left. If you want this marriage to work, something has to change. Actually change, not just promises that disappear in a week. Like what? Like Marcus needs to leave. Like we need to sit down and actually look at our finances together. Like you need to acknowledge that I'm not the villain for wanting a functional household. More crying. I can't just kick him out. Where would he go? The same places everyone goes when they need to figure their life out. A friend's couch. A room for rent. A shelter if it comes to that. He's 28 years old, Jess. He's not a child. You're cruel. You know that? Cruel and selfish. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot for another 5 minutes, letting my heart rate settle. Then I went back inside and lost myself in the rhythm of the machines. Day 21 brought a surprise. I was sitting in my apartment, eating a microwave dinner, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Thomas Brennan? Speaking. Mr. Brennan, this is Officer Patricia Chen with the police department. I'm calling about an incident report filed earlier today. My stomach dropped. What kind of incident? Your wife, Jessica Brennan, reported that you removed items from the marital home without permission. She's alleging theft of property. I set down my fork, appetite gone. I took my own belongings. Clothes, personal items, things I owned before we were married. I texted her beforehand to confirm she wouldn't be home. Do you have documentation of that text exchange? Yes. And my sister was with me as a witness. Officer Chen's tone remained neutral. Mrs. Brennan is claiming you took a television, a laptop, and several other items she considers jointly owned. The laptop is mine, purchased with my own money before we were married. The television, I had to think. We bought that together, but it's still at the house. I didn't take it. Can you come down to the station tomorrow to provide a statement? Bring any documentation you have, receipts, text messages, anything that establishes ownership. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time. We're just collecting information from both parties. I spent that evening digging through old emails and receipts, building a paper trail of what I'd owned and what we'd purchased together. Rachel came over to help, her face tight with anger. She's trying to get you arrested? She shook her head. That's low. Even for her. She's desperate. I printed out another bank statement. She thought I'd come crawling back by now. Are you going to? I looked at the pile of documentation on my counter, proof of my own existence, my own contributions, everything I'd brought to a marriage that had slowly consumed me. No. I don't think I am. The police station the next morning was exactly as uncomfortable as I'd imagined. Officer Chen was professional, taking my statement and reviewing my documentation without editorializing. When I showed her the text exchange with Jessica confirming the time I'd pick up my belongings, she made a note. This should clear things up, she said. Though I'd recommend you communicate only through text or email from now on. Keep a record of everything. Is she going to face any consequences for filing a false report? That's not typically how these situations work, Mr. Brennan. Domestic disputes are complicated. Our goal is to de-escalate, not add fuel to the fire. I left feeling simultaneously vindicated and exhausted. The idea that Jessica had tried to weaponize the police against me was almost unfathomable. Almost. Desperation makes people do things they never thought themselves capable of. My phone rang as I drove back to the apartment. Jessica. I answered. Are you out of your mind? I don't know what. The police, Jess? Really? You called the police and accused me of stealing my own belongings? I panicked. You just took things without asking. I asked. I texted you. You said you'd be at your mother's. I didn't think you'd take so much. I pulled into a parking lot, too angry to drive safely. Every single thing I took was mine. Mine. I have receipts. I have documentation. And now I have a police statement on file because you decided to lie to law enforcement. Don't talk to me like that. Like what? Like someone who's tired of being manipulated? Tired of being treated like an ATM and a doormat? She was crying again. I just want you to come home. Then make it a home worth coming back to. I hung up and sat in my truck, hands gripping the steering wheel. The anger pulsing through me was different from before, cleaner, somehow. Not the slow building resentment that had been eating me alive, but something sharper and more focused. The day 22 was a Saturday. I spent the morning at a thrift store, buying cheap furniture for my apartment. A couch that was slightly worn but clean. A small dining table with 2 chairs. A coffee maker to replace the one I'd left behind. Each purchase felt like an investment in my own independence. Rachel stopped by that afternoon with groceries and a casserole dish. "You're feeding yourself, right?" she asked, unpacking items into my mostly empty fridge. "Not just living on takeout?" "I had a salad yesterday." "A salad from a fast food place doesn't count." I helped her put things away, grateful for the company and the distraction. We were folding the paper bags when my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. The message was a photo. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was the thermostat in our house, showing a temperature of 58 degrees. "The heat got shut off," her text read. "I can't afford to get it turned back on." Rachel looked over my shoulder. "Is she serious?" I checked the date. The utility bill had been due 5 days ago. I'd paid the mortgage, as agreed, but I hadn't checked on the other bills. That had always been a joint responsibility. I'd handle some, she'd handle others. Apparently, the gas bill had been in her name. "How much?" I texted back. $340 past due, plus $200 reconnection fee. $540. Money I could afford to send. Money that would solve her immediate problem and probably buy me another week of guilt-laden phone calls about how I needed to come home. "Don't do it," Rachel said quietly. "It's November. It's getting cold at night. She's an adult. She has a job. Let her figure it out. And if she can't? Then maybe she'll finally understand what you've been dealing with." Rachel's expression softened. "I know you want to help. That's who you are. But you can't keep fixing her problems when she's the one who created this mess." I set the phone down. She could go to her mother's if it gets too cold. Exactly. The rest of Saturday passed without incident. Sunday morning, I went to the gym for the first time in months, working out the stress and anger that had taken up residence in my shoulders. The physical exhaustion felt good, earned, mine. My phone was blowing up when I got back to my truck. 7 missed calls from Jessica. A string of increasingly frantic texts. "Please. It's freezing. Marcus won't help. Says he's broke. I'm begging you." "Fine. Be that way. I'll figure it out myself." I sat in the parking lot, phone in hand, warring with myself. The decent thing would be to send the money. The easy thing. The thing that would let me sleep tonight without wondering if she was okay. But Rachel was right. I'd been doing the decent thing, the easy thing, for 19 months. And it had gotten me exactly nowhere. I texted back, "You have a job. You have a brother living there who should be helping. Figure it out." Her response came immediately, "I hate you." I turned off my phone and drove home. Monday morning, I went to work like normal. Dale noticed I seemed lighter somehow, less weighed down. I didn't tell him it was because I'd finally started putting myself first, even though it felt selfish and wrong and right all at the same time. Around noon, my phone rang. Linda again. "Thomas, Jessica is at my house. She and Marcus showed up this morning. She says you refused to help with the heating bill?" The bill was in her name. She's responsible for it. She's your wife. Then maybe she should act like it. I'd stopped being polite, stopped trying to smooth things over. "Did she tell you she's been letting her brother live there for over a year without paying rent? Did she tell you I've been covering the mortgage, the groceries, the insurance, everything except the few bills in her name?" Linda went quiet. "Did she tell you she hit me? That she threw my belongings down the stairs and then filed a false police report when I came to collect them?" "Jessica said you were leaving out important details." "I'm sure she did. Because the important details make her look bad." I took a breath. "Linda, I loved your daughter. Maybe I still do. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep her warm. Especially when she's the one who keeps dousing me in gasoline. This isn't the man I thought you were. Maybe I'm finally becoming the man I should have been all along." The call ended, and I went back to work. Day 23, and my phone stayed mercifully quiet. No calls from Jessica, no texts, no flying monkeys dispatched to guilt me into submission. The silence was both peaceful and unsettling. I used the evening to look at my finances, really look at them, spreadsheet and calculator and cold hard numbers. Without the mortgage, without the utilities on a 4-person house, without the constant drain of 3 adults living on 1.5 incomes, I had money left over at the end of the month. Actual money. Enough to start rebuilding my savings, which had been gutted over the past year. The realization hit me like cold water. I'd been drowning, and I hadn't even fully recognized it until I came up for air. Rachel invited me to dinner that night. Brian grilled steaks while Tyler was home for the weekend, and we sat around their table like a normal family. They didn't mention Jessica, didn't ask about the separation. We talked about football, about Tyler's classes, about the neighbor's dog that kept digging up Brian's flower beds. It felt like being human again. On my way home, I stopped at a red light and watched a couple cross the street, holding hands, laughing about something. They looked young, maybe mid-20s, still in that phase where everything felt possible. I wondered if Jessica and I had ever looked like that, or if I'd just been too busy solving problems to notice the cracks forming. Day 24 brought a voicemail from Marcus. His voice was different than I'd ever heard it, uncertain, almost small. Hey, man. Look, I know things are messed up. I know I should've. I probably should have done more. Helped out more. A long pause. Jessica's not doing great. She's been crying a lot. And I've been thinking maybe I should find somewhere else to crash. There's this guy from high school who might have a room available. He cleared his throat. Anyway. I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I didn't mean to make things harder for you. I listened to the message 3 times, trying to find the catch, the manipulation. But it sounded genuine. Tired and genuine. I didn't call him back. Wednesday afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Amanda, I work with Jessica at Dr. Morrison's office. She asked me to reach out. She wants you to know the mortgage payment is due Friday and she can't cover it. I stared at the message. So we'd reached the stage where she was recruiting coworkers to do her bidding. The mortgage is current, I texted back. I paid it 2 weeks ago. She said there were late fees. Then she needs to call the mortgage company and work out a payment plan. She's really struggling. I thought you should know. I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and Jessica. No response came. Thursday night, I was heating up leftover pasta when my phone rang. An unknown number, but local area code. Is this Thomas Brennan? Yes? Mr. Brennan, this is Sarah Michaels from Citizens Bank. I'm calling about the joint checking account ending in 4782. My stomach tightened. What about it? We've had some unusual activity on the account. Large cash withdrawals over the past week. Since you're a joint account holder, I wanted to verify these transactions were authorized. How large? 3 separate withdrawals. $400, $300, and $500. All from ATMs. $1,200. Money that should have been sitting there to cover bills. I didn't authorize those, I said slowly. What's the current balance? $87.43. The account that had held my last paycheck, the money I'd been planning to use for the next mortgage payment, was essentially empty. Can you tell me when these withdrawals were made? Sarah rattled off dates and times. All within the last week. All at ATMs near the house. I need to remove myself from this account, I said. Today if possible. You'll need to come into a branch. We're open until 6. I made it to the bank with 20 minutes to spare. The process of separating my finances from Jessica's was surprisingly simple, just a few forms, a new account number, instructions to transfer my direct deposit. The banker, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, didn't ask questions but clearly understood what was happening. You'll want to monitor your credit, she said quietly as I signed the final form. Just to be safe. I drove back to my apartment feeling numb. $1,200. Gone. Money I'd earned, money that was supposed to cover our obligations, withdrawn without my knowledge or permission. I called Jessica. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice wary. What? Where's the $1,200? Silence. The $1,200 that came out of our joint checking in the last week. Where is it? I needed it for bills. Which bills? Because the mortgage is paid. The utilities I'm responsible for are paid. So where did it go? That's none of your business. It's my money. Money I worked for. It's absolutely my business. Half that account is mine. I can withdraw from it if I want. For what, Jessica? What was so important that you drained our account without telling me? She didn't answer. Was it Marcus? The pieces clicked together. Did he take it? Her silence was confirmation enough. He stole from us. From you. And you're protecting him. He didn't steal. He borrowed it. He's going to pay it back. When? How? He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have anything. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My voice was cold now, all the heat of anger burned away into something harder. I understand that you value your brother more than your marriage. More than your own financial security. More than basic honesty. That's not true. I removed myself from the joint account. Effective immediately. You're on your own. You can't do that. I just did. Good luck, Jessica. I ended the call and immediately checked my credit report. No new accounts, no suspicious activity. But I set up fraud alerts anyway, changed my passwords, and made a note to check again in a week. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Friday morning, exactly 3 weeks after I'd left, my phone erupted with calls. Jessica. Linda. Marcus. Even Amanda from the dental office. I ignored all of them and went to work. At lunch, I listened to the voicemails. Jessica first, her voice panicked. Thomas, please. The electricity company is saying they're going to shut off service if I don't pay by noon. I need $300. Please. Then Linda, this is your wife. Your responsibility. You can't just abandon her. Then Marcus, surprisingly, man, look, this is my fault. I messed up. If you could just front me the money for the electric bill, I promise I'll pay you back. I've got a job interview next week. Then Jessica again, sobbing, how can you do this to me? How can you just let me suffer? Finally, Amanda, I don't know what's going on between you two, but Jessica is at work crying in the bathroom. Whatever's happening, you need to fix it. I deleted all of them and ate my sandwich. Saturday morning brought a text from Jessica's mother, the power got shut off. Jessica and Marcus are staying with me. I hope you're happy. I wasn't happy. I was exhausted. But I also wasn't going to light myself on fire anymore. Sunday was quiet. I went grocery shopping, picked up dry cleaning, lived my life like a person who wasn't in the middle of a marital crisis. The normalcy felt strange, almost wrong, but also necessary. Monday evening, day 25, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mr. Brennan? A woman's voice, professional. This is Detective Lisa Morrison with the Fraud Division. I'm calling about a case involving Marcus Riley. What about him? He's been arrested for credit card fraud. During questioning, he indicated he'd been living with you and Jessica Brennan. I'm hoping you can answer some questions about his activities over the past several months. He's been living in our house since February of last year, I said carefully. What's this about? Mr. Riley has been opening credit cards using stolen identities. We've documented at least 7 fraudulent accounts. During our investigation, we discovered several cards were delivered to your address. The mail. The stack of envelopes that had been piling up on the kitchen counter. I haven't lived there for 3 weeks. But you were aware of his activities? I was aware he was unemployed and not paying rent. I wasn't aware of any fraud. What about Jessica Brennan? Would she have known? I thought about the $1,200. About Jessica's increasing desperation. About her protecting Marcus despite everything. You'd have to ask her. Detective Morrison took my statement, asked about the timeline of Marcus moving in, whether I'd noticed any unusual packages or mail. I answered everything honestly, feeling the situation spiral further out of control with each question. When the call ended, I sat in my empty apartment and wondered how much worse things could possibly get. The answer came Tuesday afternoon. Jessica called from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, her voice was barely above a whisper. They arrested Marcus. I know. Detective Morrison called me. He used my credit cards, Thomas. He opened accounts in my name. I'm on the hook for over $15,000. I closed my eyes. Did you know what he was doing? No. I swear, I didn't know. He said he had money coming in, that he was doing online work. She broke down sobbing. I've lost everything. My credit is destroyed. My bank accounts are frozen. I can't even pay for my mother's water bill. Jess, you were right. The words came out broken, defeated. About everything. He's been using me. Using us. And I let him because I didn't want to believe my own brother could do this to me. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. What do you need? The words came out before I could stop them. I don't deserve your help. That's not what I asked. She sniffled. The mortgage is due again in 3 days. Linda covered the electricity to get it turned back on, but I have to pay her back. The water bill is overdue. And the lawyer I talked to said I'm going to need at least $2,000 to start fighting the fraud charges. Are you pressing charges against Marcus? A long pause. Yes. He stole from me. From us. I can't protect him anymore. Something in her voice had changed. The defensiveness was gone, replaced by something raw and broken. I'll cover the mortgage, I said. Like I have been. But that's it for now. You need to figure out the rest. I know. Her voice was small. Thomas? I'm sorry. For hitting you. For everything. I know you are. We sat in silence for a moment. Are you coming back? She asked finally. I don't know. I need to see that things are actually different, not just that circumstances forced your hand. That's fair. After we hung up, I sat looking at my phone for a long time. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel, the validation, the sense that I'd been right all along, never came. Instead, there was just the hollow acknowledgement that we'd both lost something, and the road to getting it back, if such a thing was even possible, would be long and uncertain. Wednesday, I transferred money for the mortgage. Not because she demanded it, not because I felt obligated, but because it was the right thing to do. My name was still on that loan, and my credit mattered. Thursday, Rachel came by with dinner and found me staring at my laptop, reading through articles about financial recovery after fraud. You're not thinking of going back, she said, though it wasn't quite a question. I'm thinking I need to understand what recovery looks like. For both of us. She hurt you. I know. And you're just going to forgive her? I don't know if I can forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can try to understand what happened. And why. And whether there's anything left worth saving. Rachel set down the food containers and sat next to me on the couch. You've always been too kind for your own good. Or maybe I'm just tired of being angry. Friday morning, day 28, I got a text from Jessica. Marcus is gone. Moved his stuff out last night before the police could seize it. Linda said he can't stay with her. I don't know where he went. Good riddance, I texted back. I changed the locks. Just thought you should know. I appreciated that she'd told me. It was a small thing, but it marked a shift, acknowledging that I had a right to know what was happening with property I was still paying for. Saturday, I drove past the house. I didn't stop, didn't pull in, just slowed down enough to see that the lawn needed mowing and there were no cars in the driveway. The place looked smaller somehow, less significant than the weight I'd been carrying. Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to a movie alone. Action film, nothing too deep, just explosions and car chases and the satisfying simplicity of good guys winning. When I walked out into the afternoon sunlight, I realized I'd gone 2 whole hours without thinking about Jessica, about the house, about any of it. Progress came in strange small victories. Monday marked 4 full weeks since I'd left. Jessica and I had been texting semi-regularly, short exchanges about bills and logistics. She'd sent photos of collection notices from the credit card companies, evidence of her conversations with the fraud department at the banks. She was trying, at least, to fix the mess Marcus had made. Tuesday evening, she called. I got a second job, she announced. Just retail, evenings and weekends, but it's an extra $600 a month. That's good. I've been looking at what we were spending. What I was spending. And you're right. I wasn't paying attention. I let Marcus take advantage of us, and I blamed you for being the one who noticed. Jess, let me finish. Please. She took a breath. I've been thinking about what kind of person I became over the last year. Someone who chose convenience over integrity. Who chose not seeing a problem over actually solving it. And I don't like that person. I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. I'm not asking you to come back, she continued. I know I have to prove that things are actually different. But I wanted you to know I'm trying. Really trying. I appreciate that. Can we maybe meet for coffee? Just to talk? Not about money or bills or any of that. Just talk? I thought about it. About the danger of falling back into old patterns. About whether enough had truly changed. Next Saturday, I said finally. 2 p.m. The coffee shop on Oak Street. Thank you. Relief flooded her voice. I'll see you then. The week passed slowly. I went to work, came home, lived my increasingly independent life. The apartment didn't feel quite so empty anymore. I bought plants, hung pictures, made it into something resembling a home. Rachel called Thursday to check in. Are you sure about this coffee thing? No. But I need to at least hear what she has to say. Just protect yourself, okay? Don't let her pull you back in before you're ready. I won't. Saturday arrived clear and cold. I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early and ordered a black coffee, sitting at a corner table where I could see the door. Jessica arrived exactly at 2, looking thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. She ordered tea and sat across from me, her hands wrapped around the cup like she needed the warmth. You look good, she said quietly. Different. I'm sleeping better. She winced at that. I deserve that. I wasn't trying to, I stopped. Yeah. I am sleeping better. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Marcus pled guilty, she said finally. His lawyer worked out a deal. He'll probably do 18 months. How do you feel about that? Relieved. Angry. Sad. All of it. She stared into her tea. He's my brother. I love him. But he burned every bridge, including ours. Did you know? I asked. About the credit cards? I suspected something wasn't right. The packages that kept arriving, the way he'd always have cash suddenly and then be broke again. But I didn't want to look too close because then I'd have to do something about it. At least she was being honest. The house feels empty now, she continued. I walk through it and realize how much space one person doesn't need. How much money was going to heat rooms nobody used, to feed someone who was destroying us from the inside. Have you thought about selling it? She looked up, surprised. I thought you loved that house. I love the idea of it. Of us building a life there. But maybe we need something smaller. Something that's actually manageable on realistic budget. We? I chose my words carefully. I don't know if there's a we anymore, Jess. But if there is going to be, it needs to look different than what it was. She nodded slowly. I started seeing a therapist. Did I mention that? No. It was part of the fraud recovery program through the bank. Free counseling. And we've been talking about boundaries. About codependency. About how I confused enabling with love. She met my eyes. I'm sorry I hit you. I'm sorry I threw your things down the stairs. I'm sorry I chose my brother over my marriage, over and over again until there was nothing left to choose. The apology I'd been waiting for, delivered with what sounded like genuine remorse. Thank you, I said. Is there any chance? She stopped herself. No. That's not fair to ask right now. We talked for another hour. About her new job, about the fraud investigation, about the weather and movies and nothing of consequence. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. Just two people who used to know each other, trying to figure out if they still could. When we left, she hesitated by her car. Can we do this again? Next week? Maybe in 2 weeks. I need time to process all this. Okay. 2 weeks. I watched her drive away, then sat in my truck for a long time before heading back to my apartment. Rachel called that evening. How'd it go? It was civil. Honest, even. That's something. She apologized. For real, not the defensive half-apology thing. And she's making changes. Do you believe her? I thought about Jessica's face, about the exhaustion and regret that had radiated from her. About the way she'd acknowledged her mistakes without making excuses. I think I believe she's trying. Whether it's enough, whether it's sustainable. I don't know yet. That's fair. Over the next few weeks, Jessica and I maintained our distance but kept in communication. She sent updates about the fraud case, about her therapy sessions, about the small victories of getting her finances back under control. I transferred the mortgage payment each month and kept my own life separate and stable. 6 weeks after I'd left, she sent me a text, the house appraised at $340,000. With the mortgage and the liens from the fraud, we'd walk away with about $60,000 if we sold. If you want to. I stared at the number. $30,000 each. Enough to start over, separately or together. Let's talk about it in person, I replied. We met again, same coffee shop. This time, she brought a folder with financial documents, spreadsheets showing what she'd been spending versus what was coming in. I've been paying down the credit cards, she said. The ones I can prove were fraud, the banks are handling. But I still owe about $4,000 from regular expenses I let pile up. How long until it's clear? 8 months if I keep working both jobs and don't have any emergencies. And then what? She looked at me steadily. Then I can actually contribute equally to a household. If that's something you're still interested in. Not the old household. Not with all those memories. I know. That's why I think we should sell. We discussed logistics, timing, what it would mean to dissolve this chapter of our lives. By the time we left, we'd agreed to list the house in the spring, after the holidays, when the market might be better. Christmas came and went. I spent it with Rachel's family, watching Tyler and his girlfriend exchange gifts, feeling both grateful for the normalcy and acutely aware of what I didn't have. Jessica sent me a text on Christmas morning, Merry Christmas. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. Merry Christmas, I replied. Taking things one day at a time. In January, we listed the house. The market was better than expected, and we had an offer within 2 weeks. Jessica moved in with a coworker, splitting rent, living within her means for the first time in years. On the day we signed the closing papers, we stood outside the attorney's office in the cold February air. This is strange, Jessica said. Ending something and not knowing what comes next. Maybe that's good. Maybe we needed to end it before we could figure out what comes next. She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd met at that barbecue 10 years ago. Do you think we can figure it out? I don't know. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. Carefully. I can do slow and careful. We started dating again. Actually dating, dinner once a week, movies, conversations that weren't about bills or obligations or who did what wrong. Learning each other again, or maybe learning each other properly for the first time. 3 months after the house sold, Jessica completed her fraud recovery program. Her credit was still damaged, but the worst of it was behind her. 6 months later, we were having dinner at a restaurant when she said, "I found a duplex for rent. 2 bedrooms, reasonable price. The landlord says he might be willing to rent to someone with credit issues if they have a good cosigner." Are you asking me to cosign? I'm asking if you'd consider renting the other half. Living next door. Close enough to rebuild trust but separate enough to maintain independence. It was perhaps the most thoughtful thing she'd ever suggested. Let me think about it. I thought about it for a week. Talked it over with Rachel, who'd softened slightly toward Jessica after watching her sustained efforts at change. "If you do this and it blows up again, I'm not going to say I told you so," Rachel said. "But I will make you take a long hard look at your patterns." Deal. I signed the lease for half of the duplex. Living next door to Jessica was strange at first. We maintained separate spaces, separate lives, but shared dinners twice a week and slowly rebuilt the foundation that had crumbled. She kept both jobs, even after the fraud debt was paid off, building savings for the first time in her adult life. Marcus got out of prison after 14 months. Jessica went to see him once, came back quiet and sad, and didn't go again. He apologized, she told me. Said he knew he'd destroyed everything. And I told him I forgave him, but I couldn't have him in my life anymore. That forgiveness didn't mean trust, and I had to protect what I was rebuilding. A year after I'd walked out of that house with my clothes scattered down the stairs, Jessica and I sat on her half of the duplex porch, watching the sunset. "Do you ever think about trying again?" she asked. "For real, I mean. Not just dating." "Sometimes." "Me too." "But not yet," I said. "No. Not yet. But someday?" I thought about everything we'd been through. The breaking point, the separation, the slow painful reconstruction of two people who'd lost themselves in a bad situation. We weren't who we'd been, and maybe that was the point. "Someday," I agreed. "When we're both sure we're doing it for the right reasons." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we watched the sun disappear behind the houses across the street. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I'd packed that bag and walked out. But it wasn't a bad ending either. Just different. Real. Earned through hard lessons and harder choices. And for now, that was enough. Story 2.
I woke up at my sister's house to find her scrolling through my phone, laughing. When I asked what was so funny, she smirked and said, "Just helping you get rid of that loser husband. I told him you want a divorce and he's been crying for hours." I grabbed my phone and I was about to yell when my mother stepped in and said, "Don't you dare touch her. She's right or I will put you in your place." My brother backed her, "Don't even try it." I just quietly left and told my husband everything. The revenge he took destroyed their world completely. The morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, and for a moment I forgot where I was. Then memory clicked into place: my sister Hannah's guest room, the emergency overnight stay after the wedding reception ran late. My phone should have been on the nightstand beside me. Instead, Hannah sat cross-legged at the foot of the bed, my phone in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent laughter. "What are you doing?" Sleep made my voice rough. She glanced up, not even bothering to look guilty. "Just helping you get rid of that loser husband. I told him you want a divorce and he's been crying for hours." The words took a second to process. Then ice flooded my veins. I lunged forward, reaching for my phone. Hannah jerked it away, still smirking, and suddenly my mother appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. "Don't you dare touch her." Mom's voice cracked like a whip. "She's right or I will put you in your place." My brother Trevor materialized behind her, arms crossed. "Don't even try it." They stood there, a unified wall, and something inside me went very still. This wasn't about protecting Hannah from an overreaction. This was planned. Coordinated. I looked at my phone in Hannah's hand, then at the three of them blocking the door, then back at Hannah's satisfied expression. Fighting would give them what they wanted: a scene, justification, proof that I was the unstable one who couldn't handle the truth. So I didn't fight. "Give me my phone," I said quietly. Hannah tossed it onto the bed like it meant nothing. I picked it up, checked the messages she'd sent from my number to my husband Marcus, and felt my stomach drop. 23 messages over the course of 3 hours, each one more cutting than the last. Accusations, complaints, demands for divorce, insults about his appearance, his job, his family. Things I would never say. Things designed to hurt. Marcus's responses grew increasingly desperate. Confusion, then pain, then bargaining, then what looked like genuine grief. The last message from him, sent 40 minutes ago: "Please just tell me what I did wrong. I love you. I thought you loved me too." I looked at Hannah. She was watching me with bright, expectant eyes, waiting for the explosion. Instead, I walked past all three of them, grabbed my overnight bag from the corner, and left. Nobody tried to stop me. The drive home took 20 minutes. I used the time to breathe, to think, to plan what I would say. Marcus's car sat in the driveway, which meant he hadn't gone to his Sunday basketball game. Bad sign. I found him at the kitchen table, laptop open, surrounded by printed pages. His eyes were red. "Marcus." He looked up, and the hope that flashed across his face before he could hide it broke something in my chest. "I didn't send those messages," I said. "Hannah took my phone while I was sleeping. She sent all of them." He stared at me. "Your sister." "My sister." "Why would?" He stopped, shook his head. "Actually, that makes more sense than I want to admit." I sat down across from him. "What are you looking at?" Marcus turned the laptop toward me. A divorce consultation website. Printed articles about asset division, legal separation, custody arrangements even though we didn't have kids yet. "I figured if you wanted out, I should at least make it easy for you," he said. Even if I didn't understand why. The fact that his first instinct, even in pain, had been to try to help me, that was Marcus. That was why I'd married him. I reached across the table and took his hand. "I don't want out. I want to figure out why my family is trying to destroy my marriage. They've never liked me." His voice was flat. "Your mom made it clear from day one that I wasn't good enough. Hannah's made comments. Trevor barely acknowledges I exist." All true. I told myself it would get better with time, that they'd see what I saw in him, the steady kindness, the quiet intelligence, the way he made me laugh without trying. But it had been 3 years since our wedding, and if anything, the hostility had intensified. "Tell me what you're thinking," Marcus said. I pulled up the messages on my phone, read through them again more carefully. "These aren't just mean. They're specific. She mentioned your promotion last month, the one you haven't even told your own parents about yet. She brought up the investment account we opened in July. She knew exactly which buttons to push." "How would she know any of that?" "Because I told her." The realization tasted bitter. "She calls me every few days, asks how things are going, acts interested in our lives. I thought she was finally trying to be a better sister." Marcus's expression darkened. She was gathering ammunition. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, I could see our neighbor Mrs. Chen working in her garden, ordinary Sunday morning routine, while my family had just tried to blow up my life before breakfast. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. "I want to know why." I stood up, started pacing. This wasn't a prank. She spent 3 hours sending those messages. Mom and Trevor were ready to back her up. They planned this. Maybe they genuinely think I'm bad for you. "No." I stopped pacing. If they thought that, they'd try to convince me, have an intervention, something direct. This was sabotage. They wanted you to think I wanted to leave you. So the question is why they'd want that. I pulled out my phone again, scrolled back through months of conversations with Hannah. Looking at them now with fresh eyes, I could see the pattern. She asked about Marcus's work, our finances, our plans. Whenever I mentioned something good, his promotion, the anniversary trip we booked, the house renovations we were planning, she'd pivot to problems. Did he help enough around the house? Was I sure about the renovation costs? Had I considered what I was giving up by staying in this city for his job? Planting seeds. Testing for cracks. "They're trying to isolate you," Marcus said, reading over my shoulder. "Classic manipulation tactic. Make you doubt your relationship, doubt yourself, until you're dependent on them again." I haven't been dependent on them since college. Exactly. You built a life separate from them. Some families can't handle that. My phone buzzed. Text from Hannah, "You're being ridiculous. I was trying to help you see the truth. Call me when you're ready to be rational." Then Mom, "Your sister cares about you. We all do. Marcus is making you paranoid. Come home and we'll talk this through as a family." Then Trevor, "Stop being dramatic. Hannah was out of line but you're overreacting. He's not worth destroying the family over." I showed Marcus the messages. He read them and let out a long breath. "They're coordinating," he said. "Look at the timing. All within 3 minutes. They're together, deciding what to send. They're at Mom's house. Sunday brunch. A tradition I'd been skipping more often lately because Marcus's schedule didn't usually allow it and I preferred spending the time with him. Another point of contention. Marcus got up, moved to the coffee maker, started a fresh pot. His hands were steady now. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by something more focused. Here's what I don't get, he said. Let's say they succeed, and we split up. What do they gain? Control. The word came out before I'd fully thought it through, but as soon as I said it, I knew it was right. They're used to having influence over my decisions. My whole childhood, they had opinions about everything: what I wore, who I spent time with, what I studied. I thought I'd broken free, but maybe I just stopped listening to them. This is them trying to reassert authority. The coffee maker gurgled. Marcus poured 2 cups, added cream to mine the way I liked it, and brought them to the table. So what's the plan? He asked. Because I know you well enough to know you have one forming. I sipped my coffee, let the warmth spread through me. We need information. Why now? Why this specific approach? And why are all 3 of them so committed to it? You think there's something else going on? I think desperate people do desperate things. They wouldn't risk our relationship this openly unless they had a reason beyond general disapproval. Marcus pulled the laptop back toward him, closed the divorce websites, opened a blank document. Let's make a timeline. When did the behavior shift? We spent the next hour documenting everything we could remember. The timeline that emerged was interesting. 6 months ago, the frequency of Hannah's calls had increased. 4 months ago, Mom had started making pointed comments about Marcus's student loans, even though we were ahead on payments. 3 months ago, Trevor had suggested I consider a job opportunity in Portland, across the country from where Marcus and I lived. They ramped up, Marcus said, studying the document. Something happened 6 months ago that made this urgent. What changed 6 months ago? I pulled out my phone, checked the calendar, scrolled back. I got promoted. You got promoted. We started talking seriously about buying a bigger house. Hannah broke up with her boyfriend. Mom's book club disbanded. Trevor, I stopped. Trevor what? Marcus leaned forward. Trevor started his business. My brother had launched a consulting firm in April, right around the 6-month mark. He'd mentioned needing startup capital. He asked if we could invest, remember? We said no because we were saving for the house down payment. Marcus's eyes widened. You think this is about money? Trevor asks about our finances every time I talk to him. Hannah has made comments about how comfortable we seem. Mom keeps bringing up family loyalty and helping each other out. But trying to break us up wouldn't get them money. No, but getting me alone might. The pieces were clicking together. If I divorced you, I'd be emotionally vulnerable, financially uncertain, probably move back home temporarily. Perfect time for them to suggest I help out family members who are struggling. That's pretty cold. That's my family. The doorbell rang. We both froze. Marcus got up, checked the front window. Your mom's car. Don't answer it. She knows we're home. Both cars are here. He looked at me. Your call. I joined him at the window. Mom stood on the porch, Hannah beside her. They'd come in force. Let them in, I said. But stay with me. Marcus opened the door. Mom's smile was warm, practiced. Sweetheart, we need to talk about this morning. There's been a misunderstanding? No misunderstanding. I stayed in the doorway, not inviting them in. Hannah sent cruel messages to Marcus pretending to be me. You and Trevor backed her up. Now you're here to do damage control. Hannah made a mistake, Mom said. She's here to apologize. Aren't you, Hannah? My sister looked like she'd rather swallow glass, but she nodded. I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. Helping how? You've seemed unhappy lately. I thought maybe you were staying out of obligation. I've seemed unhappy because you keep calling me to complain about your life and pick apart mine. Hannah's expression flickered. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I felt Marcus's presence behind me, solid and supportive. You violated my privacy, impersonated me, tried to destroy my marriage, and now you want to act like it was concern? Try again. Mom's smile tightened. You're upset. I understand. But Marcus is making you see things that aren't there. We're family. We would never deliberately hurt you. You just did. We're trying to protect you. Mom's voice rose slightly, frustration bleeding through. You've changed since you married him. You barely visit. You miss family dinners. You've pulled away from everyone who actually loves you. I built my own life. That's not the same as pulling away. It is when you choose him over us every single time. There it was. The real issue. Is that what this is about? I asked. You're upset I have priorities beyond what you want from me? We want you to be part of this family, Hannah said. Not some stranger who shows up twice a year. I show up plenty. You just don't like that I don't stay as long as you want or do everything you suggest. Marcus cleared his throat. I think what we're seeing here is a difference in expectations. You expected Emma to remain as involved in family matters as she was before we got married. She set different boundaries. That's created tension. This doesn't involve you, Mom snapped. It absolutely involves me. You sent messages from my wife's phone telling me she wants a divorce. You made me think my marriage was ending. So yes, I'm involved. Mom's eyes narrowed. You're turning her against us. I'm not turning her against anyone. I'm standing here while she speaks for herself, which maybe you should try listening to. Emma, come home with us, Hannah said suddenly. Just for a few days. Get some space from this situation. You'll see things more clearly. I'm perfectly clear right now. You're being manipulated, Mom insisted. He's isolated you, made you dependent. Stop. My voice cut through hers. I'm not isolated. I have friends, a career, a life I've chosen. The only people trying to manipulate me are standing on my porch right now. Silence fell. Mom and Hannah looked at each other, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Mom sighed. Fine. If this is how you want it, we'll respect your space. But when things fall apart, and they will, don't expect us to be waiting. Things aren't going to fall apart. They always do. Mom's smile was sad now, pitying. You'll see. They left. Marcus closed the door, locked it, and we stood in the entryway listening to the car pull away. That was interesting, he said finally. That was terrifying. My hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. They're not going to stop. No, probably not. Marcus pulled me into a hug. But now we know what we're dealing with. I buried my face in his shoulder, breathed in the familiar scent of his laundry detergent and soap. I don't want to lose my family. You might not have a choice about what relationship you have with them. You only get to choose whether you lose yourself trying to please them. He was right. The question was whether I was strong enough to make that choice. Over the next week, the messages continued. Hannah sent articles about relationship red flags. Trevor forwarded job listings in Portland. Mom called twice a day, leaving voicemails about family history and loyalty and how I was making a mistake. Marcus and I established a routine. Every evening, we'd review the day's messages together, document them, file them away. He started calling it the crazy log. Dark humor, but it helped. On Friday, Trevor showed up at my office. We need to talk, he said, cornering me by the elevator. Coffee? Something in his expression made me agree. We went to the cafe across the street, found a quiet booth in the back. I owe you an apology, Trevor said once we had our drinks. The thing at Hannah's house, backing her up like that, it wasn't right. No, it wasn't. But you need to understand where we're coming from. He leaned forward, earnest now. Dad left when you were 6. You barely remember how hard it was. But Mom raised us alone, worked 2 jobs, sacrificed everything. We're supposed to take care of each other. I'm not abandoning anyone by being married. That's not what it feels like. It feels like you chose him over us. It's not a competition, Trevor. Isn't it? He cupped his coffee, stared into it. You used to be there. Every Sunday, every holiday, every crisis. Now you're always busy. And when you do show up, you'll leave early to get back to Marcus. You're physically present but mentally gone. I grew up. That's what happens. Hannah's really struggling, he said, changing tactics. The breakup hit her hard. She needs her sister. And Mom's getting older, she worries about you constantly. We just want to know you're okay. I am okay. Better than okay. Trevor's jaw tightened. He makes good money, right? Marcus? Software engineer, that promotion? And there it was. Why do you care about Marcus's income? I don't. I care about yours. I care that you're set up well, financially stable. We are stable. Good. That's good. He paused. Because I wanted to ask if you'd reconsidered the investment opportunity. The consulting firm is really taking off, but I need capital to scale. If you and Marcus could spare $50,000, no. Just hear me out, Trevor, no. We already said no. Our answer hasn't changed. His expression shifted, something cold creeping in. So family means nothing to you now. Family means I love you, but I'm not funding your business. Those are separate things. This is why everyone's worried. You've become selfish. Money focused. That's his influence. I stood up. This conversation is over. Emma, you want $50,000 and you're using family guilt to try to get it. That's what this whole thing has been about, hasn't it? Breaking up my marriage so I'd be vulnerable and broke and desperate enough to give you whatever you wanted. Trevor's silence was answer enough. I left the cafe, drove home, found Marcus already there. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. Trevor asked for money, I said into his chest. Called it. They've been working together. All three of them. Hannah softening me up, Mom applying pressure, Trevor swooping in with the actual ask. Classic con. Good cop, bad cop, desperate cop. I pulled back, looked up at him. I want to hurt them. Is that wrong? No. It's human. Marcus brushed hair from my face. But revenge usually backfires. Makes things worse. So we just let them get away with it? We set boundaries, protect ourselves, and let natural consequences do the work. He smiled slightly. Or we could accelerate those natural consequences. What do you mean? Marcus guided me to the couch, pulled out his laptop. I've been doing some research. Your brother's consulting business? It's not going well. He's hemorrhaging money, made some bad investments, owes several creditors. Hannah's in credit card debt, about $30,000. Your mom refinanced her house last year and is struggling with payments. How do you know all this? Public records, mostly. Some educated guessing. The point is, they're all in financial trouble. That's why they're so desperate. So they try to break us up to get our money. Right. But here's the interesting part. Marcus turned the laptop toward me. Your mom's house is in a trust, with you as the secondary beneficiary. If she defaults on the mortgage, you could potentially take control of the property to protect the investment. I don't want her house. Neither do I, but she doesn't know that. And Trevor's business is structured as an LLC with some pretty shaky accounting. One formal complaint to the right regulatory body would trigger an audit. Hannah's credit card debt is with a company that's known for aggressive collection practices. Doubt if someone were to tip them off about her other assets. I stared at him. You want to destroy them financially. I want to remove their ability to keep pressuring you. People with urgent money problems become dangerous. People who realize those money problems aren't going to be solved by manipulating you usually move on to other solutions. That's ruthless. You married a software engineer who grew up poor. I learned early that the best defense is removing the incentive for attack. He closed the laptop. But it's your family. Your call. I thought about the messages on my phone, the violation of trust, the 3-hour campaign to make Marcus think I wanted to leave him. The calculated cruelty of it. Do it, I said. But I want to tell them first. I want them to know it's coming. Marcus smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Now we're talking. We spent the weekend preparing. Marcus documented everything: Trevor's business irregularities, Hannah's debt situation, Mom's refinancing terms. I drafted a message that said exactly what needed to be said. Sunday afternoon, I invited all three of them to Mom's house. They came eagerly, probably thinking I was ready to apologize or reconcile. I walked in to find them arranged in the living room like a tribunal. Mom on the couch, Hannah and Trevor flanking her. United front? Thank you for coming, I said, staying standing. Marcus waited in the car, back up if needed. We're glad you reached out, Mom said. We've been worried. I'm sure you have. Worried I'd figure out what you were really doing. The temperature in the room dropped. I talked to Trevor on Friday, I continued. He asked for $50,000. After spending weeks trying to sabotage my marriage, you sent him to make the actual money grab. That took some nerve. We weren't, Hannah started. Yes, you were. Hannah, you gathered information for months. Mom, you provided emotional manipulation. Trevor, you were the closer. It was coordinated. It was calculated. And it almost worked. Mom stood up. You're being paranoid. I'm being realistic. All three of you are in financial trouble. Trevor's business is failing. Hannah, you're drowning in debt. Mom, you refinanced at a terrible rate and you're behind on payments. You needed money? You couldn't just ask because you knew I'd say no. So you tried to manufacture a situation where I'd be vulnerable enough to say yes. Silence. I'd hit the mark. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave Marcus and me alone. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. You're going to tell anyone who asks that we're fine and you support our marriage. You're going to stop trying to manipulate me. Or what? Trevor's voice was hard. Or Marcus files a formal complaint about your business practices with a state regulatory board. They'll audit you. Given what we found, that audit won't go well. Trevor went pale. I turned to Hannah. Your credit card company doesn't know about the jewelry you inherited from Grandma, the art collection, the savings account you hid when you filed your financial disclosure. They will if we tell them. They'll pursue those assets. Hannah's mouth opened, closed. Finally, I looked at Mom. The trust on this house lists me as beneficiary. If you default, which you're about to, I can petition to take control to protect the family asset. I could sell it out from under you. You wouldn't, Mom whispered. A week ago, I wouldn't have believed you try to destroy my marriage for money. We've all learned things about each other lately. You're blackmailing us, Trevor said. I'm setting boundaries. You wanted to play hardball. Fine. But I'm better at this game than you thought. Mom sank back onto the couch. She looked older suddenly, smaller. You changed. No. I grew up. There's a difference. We're your family, Hannah said. Her voice cracked. You're supposed to protect us, not threaten us. You're supposed to love me, not use me. Funny how that works. I pulled out my phone, showed them the screen. I'm sending an email right now to all three of you. It contains everything Marcus found, all documented with sources. You'll each get a copy. Consider it insurance. As long as you leave us alone, those documents stay private. If you come after us again, everything gets filed with the appropriate authorities. I hit send. 3 phones buzzed simultaneously. This is your choice, I said. We can be distant but civil family members, or we can be enemies. I know which one I prefer. You decide which one you can live with. I walked out. Marcus started the car when he saw me coming. I got in, and we drove away from my mother's house, maybe for the last time. How'd it go? Marcus asked. They know we're serious. Think they'll comply? I think they'll hate me forever. But yes, they'll comply. They're too scared not to. Marcus reached over, squeezed my hand. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't make them into people who'd trade my happiness for their bank accounts. We drove in silence for a while. The city streets looked the same as always, but everything felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the weight of what I'd just done. My mom said I've changed, I said eventually. Maybe she's right. You've gotten stronger. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? The old Emma wouldn't have threatened her family. The old Emma wouldn't have needed to. They mistook kindness for weakness. You showed them the difference. We pulled into our driveway. Our house, our space, our life. Built together despite everyone's attempts to tear it down. What now? I asked. Now we move forward. Finish the house plans, book that anniversary trip, maybe adopt the dog we've been talking about. Normal life. Revolutionary concept. Marcus smiled. Plus it'll drive them crazy when they see we're happy. He had a point. The best revenge wasn't destruction, it was building something they couldn't touch. Over the following weeks, the promised silence held. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. At first, I checked my phone compulsively, expecting the other shoe to drop. But days turned into weeks, and the quiet remained. Marcus and I moved forward with our lives. We met with contractors about the renovation. I got another promotion at work. We started volunteering at the animal shelter on weekends, preparing for eventually getting that dog. Friends asked about my family sometimes. I kept it vague. We were taking space, focusing on our marriage, the usual explanations. Most people seemed to understand. The ones who pushed for details got a version of the truth. Family dynamics had gotten complicated, we'd needed to set boundaries. Nobody needed to know about the threats or the blackmail or the calculated dismantling of manipulation tactics. That was private. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I got a text from Trevor. Just one line, Mom's in the hospital. Heart attack. Thought you should know. Marcus found me staring at my phone in the kitchen. What's wrong? I showed him the message. He read it, handed the phone back carefully. What do you want to do? I don't know. Is this real or is it another manipulation? Only one way to find out. We drove to the hospital. I prepared myself for this to be fake, a trap, another ploy. But when we found Mom's room, she was actually there, actually sick. Hannah sat in the corner chair. Trevor stood by the window. Both looked exhausted. Mom was asleep, hooked up to monitors and IVs. She looked fragile in a way I'd never seen before. "They're keeping her overnight for observation," Hannah said quietly. "She's stable now. But it was close." "What happened?" "Stress." Trevor's voice was flat. "Doctor said her blood pressure was through the roof. She's been having chest pains for weeks but didn't tell anyone." Guilt tried to crawl up my throat. I pushed it back down. "I'm glad she's okay," I said. "Are you?" Hannah looked at me directly for the first time. "Because you made it pretty clear you're done with this family?" "I'm done with being manipulated." "That's different." "You threatened to take her house. After you tried to destroy my marriage." We stared at each other across Mom's hospital bed. Two sisters who used to be close, now strangers connected only by blood and grievance. Trevor cleared his throat. "The stress from all this, the arguments, the tension, the doctor thinks it contributed to the heart attack. So this is my fault." I kept my voice level. "I didn't say that." "You implied it pretty heavily." Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. Grounding. Reminding me I didn't have to engage. "Look," Trevor said, "I'm not trying to start another fight. But Mom's sick. Whatever happened between us, she's still our mother. She's scared and she's asking for you." "She's asleep." "She was asking earlier. Before the medication knocked her out." I looked at Mom's face, peaceful in sleep. How many times had I seen that face growing up? Helping with homework, making birthday cakes, teaching me to drive. Before the manipulation and the pressure and the realization that love came with strings attached. "I'll stay for a bit," I said. "But I'm not negotiating. The boundaries we set still stand." Hannah's expression hardened. "Even now? Even when she almost died?" "Especially now. Stress contributed to this, remember? Constant conflict is stressful. The best thing for her recovery is for everyone to respect each other's space." "That's cold, Emma." "That's reality. You tried to break up my marriage to get money. That doesn't become okay just because Mom got sick." "We were desperate," Trevor said. "People do stupid things when they're desperate." "I know. That's why I'm protecting myself." Mom stirred, made a small sound. We all froze. But she didn't wake, just shifted positions slightly before settling again. "You should go," Hannah said. "She doesn't need the stress of seeing you right now." "Probably not," I agreed. "Marcus and I will wait in the hallway. Let me know when she wakes up and if she actually wants to see me." We left the room, found a bench near the elevators. Hospital sounds echoed around us, beeping monitors, quiet conversations, the squeak of wheels on linoleum. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Surprisingly, yes. I thought I'd feel guilty. I thought I'd cave, apologize, take it all back. But you don't. No. Because nothing's changed except she got sick. They're still the same people who tried to manipulate me. I'm still the person who refused to be manipulated. Illness doesn't erase that. Some people would say family should get second chances. Some people haven't been through what I have with them. I leaned against him. Is that wrong? No. It's self-preservation. We sat there for about an hour before Trevor emerged. He looked surprised to see us still waiting. "She's awake," he said. "Asking for you." I stood up, smoothed my shirt. "Just me?" "She didn't specify. But probably just you." Marcus squeezed my hand. "I'll be right here." I followed Trevor back to the room. Hannah had moved to stand by the window, arms crossed. Mom was propped up slightly, eyes open but tired. "Emma." Her voice was weak. "Hi, Mom. You came." "Of course I came." She managed a small smile. "After everything?" "You're still my mother. I'm still your daughter. The rest is complicated, but that part isn't." Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry. For all of it. Hannah told me what she did with your phone. I should have stopped it. I should have protected you instead of enabling her." I glanced at Hannah. She was staring determinedly out the window. "You should have," I agreed. "But you didn't. And that's something we'll all have to live with." "I was scared," Mom said. "Scared of losing you. Scared you'd choose Marcus over us and we'd never see you again. So I tried to control things, and I made everything worse." "You did." Can you forgive me? The question hung in the air. Hannah turned from the window, watching. Trevor stood frozen by the door. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe eventually. But not right now. Right now I'm still angry and hurt and trying to figure out who I am separate from who you wanted me to be. That's fair. Mom closed her eyes briefly. I raised you to be independent and strong, then got angry when you actually were. That's not fair to you. No, it isn't. Marcus makes you happy? Very. Then I should be happy for you. I should have been happy from the start. She opened her eyes again. I'm going to try to do better. I can't promise I'll be perfect. But I'll try. That's all I can ask. We talked for a few more minutes, about her treatment plan, the recovery timeline, nothing too deep. Then exhaustion caught up with her and she dozed off again. I rejoined Marcus in the hallway. He searched my face. How was it? Weird. Sad. Maybe the beginning of something better, or maybe just a temporary truce. Time will tell. Time will tell, I agreed. We left the hospital as evening fell. The city was lighting up, windows glowing warm against the darkening sky. Somewhere in there was our home, our life, our future. You know what's funny? I said as we drove. They wanted me to choose them over you. Like it was one or the other. But the real choice was between their version of me and my actual self. And you chose yourself. I chose us. The life we built. The person I am with you, who's stronger and happier and more honest than the person I was trying to be for them. Marcus smiled. I like that person. She likes you too. The weeks following Mom's hospitalization were tentative. She called occasionally, conversations kept light and brief. Hannah remained distant but civil when we crossed paths at the hospital. Trevor focused on salvaging his business without asking me for money. It wasn't the family relationship I'd once imagined having. But it was honest, which counted for something. Marcus and I moved forward with our plans. The house renovation started in September. We adopted a dog, a gentle golden retriever mix named Biscuit, who immediately claimed the entire couch as his personal territory. Work stayed busy. Life stayed good. One Saturday in October, 3 months after everything had exploded, I was working in the garden when a car pulled up. Hannah got out, hesitated, then walked over. Hey, she said. Hey yourself. I wanted to apologize. Properly. She sat down on the grass beside me, uninvited but not unwelcome. What I did with your phone, that was beyond wrong. I convinced myself I was helping you, but really I was just jealous. Jealous? You have your life together. Good marriage, good job, good house. I'm drowning in debt from bad decisions, my relationships keep failing, and I'm living with Mom at 32. I wanted to believe your life wasn't as good as it looked. So you tried to prove it. Yeah. Really mature, I know. She pulled up grass, let it fall through her fingers. Trevor and I have been talking about why we went along with Mom's ideas, why we thought it was okay to pressure you. Turns out we're all kind of a mess. Everyone's a mess. It's how you handle it that matters. You handled it by threatening to destroy us financially. You handled your situation by trying to destroy my marriage. At least my threats were honest. Hannah laughed, surprising both of us. Fair point. We sat in silence for a moment. Biscuit wandered over, sniffed Hannah, decided she was acceptable, and flopped down between us. I'm not asking you to trust me again, Hannah said, scratching Biscuit's ears. I know that's gone. But maybe we could try being sisters again eventually. The kind who are careful with each other but still care. Maybe, I said. But it'll take time. And it requires you actually respecting my boundaries. I know. I'm working on it. She stood up, brushed grass from her jeans. Mom wants to have Thanksgiving. She's asking if you and Marcus would come. No pressure. No ulterior motives. Just dinner. I'll think about it. That's more than I expected. Hannah smiled slightly. You've gotten tougher. I've gotten clearer about what I will and won't accept. There's a difference. Is there? Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior. Even if they're family. Especially if they're family. Hannah nodded slowly. I'm starting to understand that. She left. I went back to my garden, digging in the earth, planting bulbs that wouldn't bloom until spring. Patient work. The kind that required faith that things would grow given time and proper care. Marcus came outside with 2 glasses of iced tea. He handed me one, surveyed my progress. Hannah stopped by? Yep. Apologized. Sincere? Seemed to be. Time will tell. Your favorite phrase lately? I smiled. It's accurate. Some things can't be rushed. We sat on the porch steps, watching Biscuit chase leaves across the yard. The afternoon sun was warm, the air smelled like fall, and somewhere nearby someone was playing music with their windows open. So about Thanksgiving, Marcus said. What are you thinking? I'm thinking maybe we host. Here. Our house, our rules, our space. They can come if they want to, but they're guests in our life, not us being absorbed back into theirs. I like it. You're okay with cooking for my potentially manipulative family? Your family who now knows we don't bluff? Sure. Plus, I make an excellent turkey. You've never made a turkey. How hard can it be? I laughed, leaned against him. Famous last words. We'll figure it out. We always do. And that was the truth of it. Whatever came next, difficult family dinners, tentative reconciliations, ongoing boundary enforcement, we'd figure it out together. Not because it was easy, but because we'd chosen each other and that choice meant something. Thanksgiving arrived faster than expected. Marcus spent the morning wrestling with a 20-pound turkey while I prepared side dishes and tried not to micromanage. Biscuit stationed himself strategically near the kitchen, hoping for dropped food. This bird has betrayed me, Marcus announced around noon, elbow deep in stuffing preparation. You're doing fine. There are parts of this animal I didn't know existed. Why does it have a bag of organs inside it? Giblets. They're traditional. They're disturbing. He held up the bag like it might explode. What do I do with them? We're making gravy. From organ meat. Welcome to Thanksgiving. Despite his protests, Marcus handled the turkey with growing confidence. By 2 o'clock, the house smelled incredible, roasting meat, sage, cinnamon from the pumpkin pie cooling on the counter. The doorbell rang at 3. I dried my hands, glanced at Marcus. He nodded encouragement. Mom stood on the porch holding a bottle of wine, dressed nicely but not formally. Hannah waited behind her with a salad bowl. Trevor brought up the rear, carrying what looked like a store-bought pie. Hi, I said. Thank you for having us, Mom replied. Careful. Polite. Like we were acquaintances rather than family. I stepped aside, let them in. Biscuit immediately investigated the newcomers, tail wagging. Hannah crouched to pet him, and something in her posture relaxed. He's beautiful, she said. What's his name? Biscuit. Perfect name. She scratched behind his ears while he gazed at her adoringly. Dogs were excellent judges of effort, Hannah was trying, and Biscuit appreciated it. Dinner preparation filled the awkward silences. Mom helped with place settings. Trevor opened the wine. Hannah tossed her salad with homemade dressing that actually smelled good. We moved around the kitchen in careful choreography, aware of boundaries but functional. Marcus carved the turkey with surprising skill. See? I told you I could handle it. You watched 3 tutorial videos this morning. Research is part of the process. Trevor laughed, a genuine sound that caught me off guard. I respect the dedication. We gathered around the table, plates loaded with food. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Mom raised her glass. To Emma and Marcus, for opening their home despite having every reason not to. We drank. The wine was good, Mom had brought the expensive kind she usually saved for special occasions. Conversation started tentatively. Weather, Biscuit's adoption story, Marcus's turkey preparation saga. Safe topics. Nothing controversial. But gradually, as the meal progressed and the wine flowed, things deepened. The business is stable now, Trevor said during a lull. Not growing fast, but sustainable. I brought on a partner who actually knows what he's doing with the financial side. That's good, I said. Yeah. Turns out trying to do everything yourself is a recipe for disaster. He met my eyes. I should have asked for advice instead of money. Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble. Advice I would have given for free. I know. That's the stupid part. Pride gets in the way of common sense. Hannah pushed food around her plate. I'm doing the debt repayment program. It'll take 3 years to clear everything, but the counselor says I'm on track. I even closed most of my credit cards. Most? Marcus asked gently. Keeping one for emergencies. But frozen in a block of ice in my freezer, so I really have to want something before I can use it. Creative solution, I said. Desperate times. She smiled slightly. I got a second job. Waitressing on weekends. It's humbling, but the tips are decent. Mom had been quiet through these exchanges, eating slowly, listening. Finally, she set down her fork. I refinanced again, she said. Better terms this time. My financial advisor, yes, I got one, says I'll have the house paid off in 15 years if I stick to the plan. Longer than I wanted, but manageable. That's great, Mom. It's reality. I spent years living beyond my means, trying to maintain appearances. The house, the car, the lifestyle. All of it propped up by debt and magical thinking. She looked at me directly. You were right to refuse to bail me out. I needed to fix my own problems. The admission hung in the air. This was as close to vulnerability as Mom had shown in years. We all make financial mistakes, Marcus said diplomatically. The important thing is learning from them. You didn't, Trevor pointed out. You two seem to have your act together. Marcus shrugged. Emma and I are both naturally anxious about money. We oversave if anything. It's not virtue, it's just different trauma responses. Growing up poor will do that, I added. Marcus's family struggled. Made him careful. My dad leaving made me determined to never depend on anyone financially. Is that why you work so hard? Hannah asked. I always thought you were just ambitious. Ambition is part of it. But mostly I want security. The kind that can't be taken away if someone leaves or dies or decides I'm not worth supporting anymore. Mom flinched. Your father leaving affected you more than I realized. It affected all of us. We just processed it differently. Silence settled again, but this time it felt contemplative rather than awkward. We were telling truths we'd avoided for years, and surprisingly, nobody was wielding them as weapons. Can I ask something? Trevor said. When you sent those documents about our financial situations, how much of that was bluff? Marcus and I exchanged glances. Some of it, I admitted. We had documentation, but whether we'd actually follow through depended on whether you kept pushing. Would you have taken Mom's house? No. But I would have filed to protect the trust, which would have triggered investigations you couldn't afford. The result would have been similar: loss of control, enforced financial oversight. And my business audit? That one was real. I had the complaint drafted and ready to file. One more incident and it would have gone through. Trevor absorbed this. Fair enough. We were trying to manipulate you. You showed us what real leverage looks like. I showed you I was serious. That's different. Is it? Yes. Because I didn't want to use any of it. I wanted you to leave us alone so nobody had to get hurt. Hannah refilled her wine glass. You know what's weird? I think this is the most honest conversation we've had as a family in decades. She was right. We'd spent years dancing around dysfunction, pretending problems didn't exist, maintaining surfaces while everything underneath rotted. This, messy and uncomfortable as it was, felt more real than any holiday gathering I could remember. Why did we get like this? I asked. We weren't always manipulative and hostile. Mom considered the question. Your father leaving changed our family structure. Suddenly it was me against the world, trying to provide and protect and prove I could do it alone. I raised you three to be a unit, to stick together because that was the only way to survive. But we're not surviving anymore, Trevor said. We're adults with separate lives. The unit doesn't need to be so tight. I couldn't accept that. Every time one of you pulled away, it felt like abandonment. Like I'd failed. Mom's voice wavered. Emma, when you married Marcus, I felt like I was losing my daughter. So I tried to hold tighter, and that just pushed you further away. I never wanted to leave you, I said quietly. I wanted to grow up. I see that now. I'm trying to see that now. The turkey carcass sat between us, picked clean. Empty serving dishes dotted the table. Biscuit had fallen asleep under Trevor's chair, snoring softly. Marcus started clearing plates. Hannah jumped up to help, and soon we had an assembly line going, scraping, rinsing, loading the dishwasher. Mom wrapped leftovers while Trevor gathered wine glasses. Domestic choreography, the kind that felt surprisingly normal. You two did good, Mom said, surveying the kitchen. The dinner, the house, your life together. It's solid. We work at it, I said. That's the part I didn't understand. I thought love meant everything should be easy. When things got hard with your father, I assumed we'd failed. Took me decades to realize that working through difficulty is what makes things strong. Trevor dried his hands on a towel. I should probably tell you, I'm seeing a therapist. The business stress got bad enough that my doctor recommended it. Turns out I have some family dynamic stuff to work through. We all do, Hannah said. I started therapy last month too. Mostly about the debt and spending, but we've talked about family patterns. How I seek validation through purchases because I never felt good enough. Good enough for what? I asked. For you. For Mom. You were always the successful one, Emma. Good grades, good job, good marriage. I felt like I could never measure up, so I stopped trying and started spending instead. This was news to me. I'd seen Hannah as the favored one, prettier, more social, easier to love. Apparently, she'd been measuring herself against me the whole time. We should have talked about this years ago, I said. We should have. But we didn't know how. Hannah looked at Mom. We learned conflict avoidance from an expert. Mom didn't argue. Guilty. I thought protecting you from difficult emotions would help. Instead, I just taught you to bury everything until it exploded. Marcus emerged from the kitchen with a pumpkin pie and a stack of plates. Who wants dessert? Everyone did. We ate pie and drank coffee, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics: Biscuit's training progress, the renovations we'd done, Trevor's business partner's strange habit of color-coding everything. By the time they left, the sky had darkened and the temperature had dropped. Mom hugged me at the door, a real hug, not the brief, performative kind. Thank you, she whispered. For not giving up on us completely. I didn't give up. I just stopped accepting unacceptable behavior. Best decision you could have made. She pulled back, looked at me seriously. I mean it. You drew lines. We needed that. Trevor shook Marcus's hand. Take care of her. Always, Marcus replied. Hannah lingered on the porch after the others had reached the car. This doesn't fix everything. I know. But it's something. It is. She smiled, a real smile this time, and jogged down the steps to join Mom and Trevor. Marcus and I stood in the doorway, watching them drive away. Biscuit pressed against my leg, warm and solid. That went better than expected, Marcus said. Much better. Almost suspiciously better. You think they're plotting something? No. I think they're trying. Which is somehow more terrifying. He laughed, pulled me close. Change is scary. Change is exhausting. I'm going to need a week to process all that emotional honesty. Take 2 weeks. We earned it. We cleaned up the remaining dishes together, moving in comfortable rhythm. The house still smelled like Thanksgiving, spices and warmth, and the particular satisfaction of a meal shared. Biscuit followed us from room to room, hoping for more dropped food but settling for companionship. The revenge Marcus and I had taken wasn't flashy. We hadn't destroyed anyone or exposed dramatic secrets. We'd simply refused to be victims, established consequences, and protected what we'd built. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. Sometimes it's drawing lines and making them stick. Sometimes it's choosing yourself when everyone expects you to sacrifice yourself. And sometimes, if you're lucky, revenge and healing look remarkably similar. Both require standing firm in your truth and refusing a compromise on what matters. Mom's house didn't get taken. Trevor's business survived scrutiny, though he downsized significantly. Hannah started addressing her debt with a financial counselor. The threats I'd made remained just threats because they remained unnecessary. Everyone learned that actions have consequences and that I was serious about my boundaries. Family dinners resumed eventually, awkward at first, then gradually easier. Trust rebuilt slowly, measured in small gestures and kept promises. Some wounds healed. Some left scars. That was okay. Marcus and I kept building our life: the renovated kitchen, the garden that finally flourished, a cat we adopted to keep Biscuit company, the promotion that took my career in new directions, the anniversary trip that became an annual tradition. We were happy. Not because we destroyed anyone or proven anything. Happy because we'd chosen each other and defended that choice when it was threatened. Because we'd learned that protecting your own happiness isn't selfish, it's essential. Sometimes revenge is loud and dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and firm. And sometimes the greatest revenge is simply refusing to let other people's desperation become your emergency, their problems become your responsibility, their version of you replace your authentic self. We chose ourselves. We chose each other. We chose honesty over enabling, boundaries over guilt, our truth over their narrative. And in the end, that choice, that refusal to be manipulated even by family, even when it hurt, even when it looked cold, saved us. Not because we destroyed them, but because we refused to destroy ourselves.
Story 3. My wife leaned across our anniversary dinner table and began touching the waiter's arm, laughing too loudly at his jokes while looking sideways to make sure I was watching. When I asked if we could just enjoy our evening together, she tossed her hair and sneered, "I'm a free woman and I can do what I want and I can handle myself." I just nodded, paid exactly half the bill, and walked out of the restaurant without another word. That was 40 minutes ago. And suddenly she wants me back because the waiter won't leave her alone. The text came through while I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a convenience store 3 miles from Marcello's. My hands were still shaking from the confrontation, the adrenaline making it hard to hold the phone steady. "Brandon, please come back. He won't leave me alone." I stared at the message for a long moment. The letters seemed to rearrange themselves on the screen, forming patterns that made no sense. This was Jessica. My wife of 7 years. The woman who had just humiliated me in front of a restaurant full of strangers on what was supposed to be our anniversary celebration. The scene at the restaurant kept replaying in my mind like a video stuck on loop. We'd arrived at 7, right on time for our reservation. Jessica had worn the black dress I'd always loved, the one that made her look elegant and sophisticated. For the first 20 minutes, everything had been perfect. We'd ordered wine, talked about work, laughed about a ridiculous email chain her boss had started about proper conference room etiquette. Then Kyle had appeared to take our order. He was handsome in that generic way that male models are handsome, square jaw, perfect teeth, hair styled with just enough product to look effortless. And Jessica had lit up like someone had flipped a switch inside her. At first, I'd thought I was imagining it. The extra brightness in her smile, the way she leaned forward slightly when he talked, the laugh that seemed half an octave higher than her normal one. But as the evening progressed, the flirtation became impossible to ignore. She'd touched his arm while ordering. Twice. "Kyle, you're so funny," she'd said after he made some forgettable joke about the salmon being wild caught. "Kyle, what do you think I should get?" When she was deciding between 2 desserts. "Kyle, has anyone ever told you that you have amazing eyes?" While I sat there like a piece of furniture, completely invisible. The worst part wasn't even the flirting itself. It was the way she kept glancing at me between each interaction, measuring my reaction. She wanted me to see it. Wanted me to feel small and inadequate and jealous. This wasn't carelessness or thoughtlessness. This was deliberate cruelty. I'd tried to redirect things halfway through the main course. "Jessica, can we just enjoy our evening together?" My voice had been calm, measured, but with an edge of pleading that I hated hearing in myself. She'd turned to me then, and the look on her face had been something I'd never seen before. Cold amusement mixed with contempt. "I'm a free woman and I can do what I want and I can handle myself." The words had come out sharp and precise, calculated to cut. And they had. They'd sliced right through whatever remained of my pride. The couple at the next table had stopped eating mid-bite. An older man 2 tables over had looked at me with pity. The sommelier had suddenly become very interested in a wine bottle across the room. Everyone had heard. Everyone had witnessed my humiliation. I'd nodded once, pulled out my wallet, counted out exactly my half of the bill plus tax and tip, placed the cash on the table, and walked out. No dramatic exit speech. No raised voice. Just a quiet exit that somehow felt louder than shouting would have been. Another text arrived, pulling me back to the present moment. "I'm serious. I need you." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to type something cutting, something that would hurt her the way she'd hurt me. The other part wanted to rush back, to be the hero, to fix whatever mess she'd gotten herself into. That second part made me feel sick. It meant that even after everything, some pathetic piece of me still wanted her approval, still wanted to prove I was worth choosing. A third text appeared. "Please. I'm scared." I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and started the engine. But I didn't drive back to the restaurant. Instead, I pulled out of the convenience store parking lot and headed in the opposite direction, toward home. Whatever was happening with Jessica and Kyle, she'd made it clear she could handle herself. She was a free woman, after all. The drive home took 20 minutes through the Saturday evening traffic. I kept replaying the dinner in my head, dissecting each moment like a pathologist examining tissue samples. We'd been married for 7 years, together for 9, and I'd never seen her act that way. The flirtation had been aggressive, deliberate. She'd made eye contact with me between each touch of the waiter's forearm, each toss of her auburn hair, each manufactured giggle at his mediocre jokes about the specials. But maybe I'd been seeing only what I wanted to see for longer than I cared to admit. The signs had been there for months, maybe longer. Jessica had started working late more frequently, coming home with stories about projects and meetings that seemed to energize her in ways that our evenings together never did. She'd joined a gym in January and had become obsessive about her workout schedule, defensive when I asked if we could have dinner together on nights she had classes scheduled. 3 months ago, she'd changed her phone password without telling me. We'd always had an open phone policy in our marriage, not because we checked on each other but because we had nothing to hide. When I'd needed to use her phone to call my own after misplacing it, she'd snatched it away and entered the code herself before handing it back. Privacy is important, she'd said, as if I'd violated some boundary we'd never established. 2 months ago, she'd stopped initiating physical intimacy entirely. I'd tried not to notice, tried to tell myself it was just stress from work or fatigue from her new fitness routine. But the absence of affection had grown like a void between us, expanding until we were sleeping on opposite sides of the bed, barely touching even accidentally. 6 weeks ago, she'd forgotten our anniversary entirely. I'd mentioned it that morning, reminded her we had reservations that evening, and she'd looked at me blankly. "I have a work thing tonight," she'd said. "Can we do it tomorrow?" We'd rescheduled for tonight. Clearly, that had been a mistake. When I'd tried to redirect the conversation to us, to salvage something from the evening, she'd delivered that line about being a free woman with such venom that the couple at the next table had gone silent mid-bite. The words had carried across the restaurant like a slap, sharp in public and designed to humiliate. The waiter's name was Kyle. I remembered because Jessica had asked him to repeat it twice, then used it in every sentence thereafter. "Kyle, you're so funny. Kyle, what do you recommend? Kyle, has anyone ever told you that you have amazing eyes?" My phone buzzed again on the passenger seat. I didn't look at it. Our apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted textile mill in the downtown district. The industrial aesthetic had appealed to Jessica when we'd moved in 4 years ago. Exposed brick, high ceilings, metal beam supports painted black. Now the space felt cavernous and cold as I climbed the stairs. I made coffee even though it was nearly 9 o'clock. My hands had stopped shaking but my mind was racing, jumping from thought to thought like a stone skipping across water. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed, familiar sounds in the darkness of our kitchen. The texts kept coming. I'd left the phone on the counter and could see the screen lighting up with each new message. I didn't read them. Instead, I opened my laptop and started going through our bank statements. This wasn't paranoia or revenge planning. It was practical. The moment she'd said those words, the moment she'd made it clear that our marriage was some kind of cage she needed to escape from, I'd understood that I needed to protect myself. We had a joint checking account that we both contributed to for household expenses. We also had individual accounts for personal spending. I'd always thought this was a healthy boundary, a way to maintain some independence within the marriage. Now I was grateful for it. The joint account had $4,847 in it. I transferred exactly half to my personal account, $2,423.50. Then I started a spreadsheet, documenting every shared expense from the past 6 months. Rent, utilities, groceries, the new couch we'd bought in August after Jessica had decided our old one was embarrassingly dated. The vacation to Portland last spring where she'd spent most of the time on her phone, taking pictures for social media while I explored the city alone. My phone rang. Jessica's contact photo filled the screen, a picture from our honeymoon in the Bahamas, both of us sunburned and grinning, still believing we'd beat the statistics on marriage failure. I let it go to voicemail. The coffee was ready. I poured a cup and continued working through the financial documentation. After 30 minutes, I had a clear picture. We'd split things fairly evenly over the course of our marriage. She earned slightly more than me. Jessica was a marketing director at a pharmaceutical company while I worked as a civil engineer for the city, but our contributions to shared expenses had always been proportional. Looking at the numbers, I could see our relationship mapped out in debits and credits. The furniture we'd bought when we first moved in together, full of optimism and plans for the future. The gradual increase in restaurant expenses as we'd stopped cooking together at home. The separate gym memberships that had replaced our weekend hikes. The individual purchases that had grown more frequent and more expensive as we'd invested in ourselves rather than in us. I created a second document and began listing assets. The furniture we'd bought together. The wedding gift still in use, the KitchenAid mixer from my aunt that had made exactly 3 batches of cookies in 7 years, the expensive knife set from Jessica's parents that she'd never let me use because I wasn't careful enough. The dishes, the television, the kitchen appliances. Everything needed to be cataloged. The phone rang again. This time I picked it up. "Where are you?" Jessica's voice was pitched higher than normal, tight with stress. "Home. I need you to come get me. Call a rideshare." The words came out flat, emotionless. I was surprised by how easy it was to sound completely indifferent. "Brandon, I'm not joking. This guy is being really aggressive and I don't feel safe." I took a sip of coffee. It was too hot and burned my tongue. "Where's Kyle?" "Who?" The fact that she had to ask, that she didn't immediately know which waiter I was referring to despite spending the entire evening flirting with him, told me everything I needed to know about how seriously she'd taken our marriage. "The waiter. Kyle. The one with the amazing eyes." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Are you really doing this right now?" "I'm asking where the waiter is. The one you were so interested in." "He's the problem. He wouldn't leave me alone after you left. He finished his shift and followed me outside. I told him I was married but he won't listen." "You told him you're a free woman who can handle yourself. So handle yourself." "Brandon." I ended the call. My hands were shaking again. I set the phone down and gripped the edge of the counter, breathing slowly through my nose. This wasn't who I wanted to be. The person who left someone in a dangerous situation out of spite or wounded pride. But I also wasn't sure I believed her. The restaurant was 3 miles away. If Kyle was really being aggressive, really making her feel unsafe, she had options. The restaurant management. The police. The rideshare she could call with 3 taps on her phone screen. But not me. Not anymore. I went back to my laptop and opened my email. I'd been putting off a work project all weekend, trying to make space for our anniversary celebration. A bridge inspection report that needed to be reviewed and submitted by Monday morning. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days ensuring structural integrity while my marriage crumbled like weathered concrete. The work was mechanical, soothing in its predictability. Load calculations, stress analysis, recommendations for repair. Numbers didn't lie. Steel either met specifications or it didn't. Concrete either held or it cracked. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation, no space for someone to rewrite the rules because they felt trapped or bored or restless. 20 minutes passed. My phone buzzed with a text message. Fine. I'll figure it out myself. Like I always do. That last sentence hit harder than it should have. Jessica had been fiercely independent when we met. It was one of the things that had attracted me to her. She'd grown up in a military family, moved 8 times before finishing high school, learned to adapt and survive without putting down roots. Her father was a colonel, her mother a nurse who'd followed him from base to base, raising 3 daughters in a series of identical base housing units. Jessica had rebelled against that structure by being aggressively self-sufficient. She'd put herself through college working 3 jobs, graduated summa cum laude, landed a corporate position before her ink on her diploma was dry. She didn't ask for help, didn't rely on others, didn't let herself need anyone. I'd thought we balanced each other well, her adventurous spirit and my stability, her spontaneity and my planning. She'd push me to try new things, to take risks, to live more fully. I'd provide a safe harbor when her restlessness got exhausting, a place to return to when the adventure lost its shine. Somewhere along the way, that balance had become a source of friction. She'd started saying things like "you're too predictable and we never do anything exciting." I'd tried to be more spontaneous, suggesting last-minute weekend trips or trying new restaurants. Tonight had been one of those attempts. Marcello's had opened 3 months ago and gotten excellent reviews. I'd made the reservation 6 weeks in advance, planned the whole evening, even arranged to leave work early so I could stop by the florist and pick up the roses she loved. The roses were still in my truck, wilting in their cellophane wrap. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, but not one I had saved in my contacts. Hello? Is this Brandon Miller? A male voice, professional tone with an edge of authority. Yes. This is Officer Chen with the City Police. I'm here with your wife Jessica Miller. She asked me to call you. My stomach dropped. The surge of guilt was immediate and overwhelming. Is she okay? She's fine. We had a report of harassment at Marcello's restaurant. She's given a statement and we're arranging for her to get home safely. She wanted me to let you know what was happening. What happened exactly? An employee of the restaurant followed her into the parking lot after his shift ended. He became verbally aggressive when she rejected his advances. Made some inappropriate statements. We have him in custody. I see. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like I was hearing someone else speak. She mentioned you'd left the restaurant earlier in the evening. There was something in the officer's tone. Not quite accusation, but definitely a question. An invitation to explain myself. We had a disagreement. I thought she wanted space. The words felt inadequate, a reduction of the evening's humiliation into something neutral and manageable. Officer Chen's voice remained neutral. Understood. Do you want to come pick her up, or should we arrange alternative transportation? I looked around our apartment. The exposed brick walls that Jessica had loved when we first moved in. The industrial light fixtures she'd picked out from a vintage shop, spending 3 Saturdays visiting different stores until she found the perfect ones. The throw pillows on the couch that she'd insisted would tie the room together, even though I thought they were overpriced and unnecessary. Everything in this space had her fingerprints on it, her choices, her vision of what our life together should look like. And she'd thrown it all away to flirt with a stranger. To make me feel small. To prove some point I didn't understand and probably never would. But she was still my wife. Whatever had happened between us at dinner, whatever damage she'd done to our marriage, she was in trouble and needed help. The man I wanted to be wouldn't leave her stranded with the police because he was hurt and angry. I'll come get her. She's at the restaurant parking lot. We'll wait with her until you arrive. The drive back to Marcello's felt longer than the drive home had. I kept the radio off, processing what the officer had told me. Part of me felt vindicated. She really had gotten herself into a situation she couldn't handle. Another part felt guilty for leaving her there, even if she'd brought it on herself. But the largest part felt numb, Like I was watching all of this happen to someone else. Traffic was lighter now. The dinner rush had ended and the Saturday night crowd hadn't hit the bars yet. I passed familiar landmarks, the coffee shop where Jessica and I used to meet for weekend breakfasts when we were dating, the park where I'd proposed to her on a snowy December evening, the movie theater where we'd had our first argument about whether to see an action film or a romantic comedy. We'd compromised and seen neither, leaving the theater to walk around downtown until we'd both forgotten what we were arguing about. Those memories felt like they belonged to different people. The young couple who'd compromised and communicated and cared about each other's feelings had been replaced by two strangers who shared an apartment and a last name but little else. Two police cruisers were parked in the lot when I arrived, light bars dark but still imposing in their authority. Jessica was sitting in the back of one of them with the door open, looking small and vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. An officer was standing nearby, Officer Chen, I assumed, and a second officer was talking to a man in handcuffs next to the other vehicle. Kyle looked different out of his server uniform. Younger, somehow, and smaller. He couldn't have been more than 25, probably working his way through graduate school or trying to break into acting like everyone else in the city. His face was red and he was arguing with the officer, his voice carrying across the parking lot even though I couldn't make out the words. The confidence he'd displayed in the restaurant had evaporated, replaced by the panic of someone realizing they crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Jessica saw me and got out of the police car. She'd been crying, her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red and puffy. The confident woman who'd been flirting with a stranger 2 hours earlier had vanished, replaced by someone who looked scared and exhausted and small. Officer Chen approached me as I got out of my truck. "Mr. Miller? That's me. Your wife is free to go. We'll be filing charges against the other individual for harassment and assault." "Assault?" He grabbed her arm when she tried to walk away. "We have it on the restaurant security footage." Jessica walked over, hugging herself despite the warm evening. She looked small and vulnerable, nothing like the confident woman who'd been flirting with a stranger 2 hours earlier. Her black dress was wrinkled now, her hair disheveled, her heels scuffed from whatever had happened in the parking lot. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Her voice was hoarse, probably from crying. I nodded to Officer Chen. "Thank you for handling this. Just doing our job. Mrs. Miller, if you need anything else, here's my card." He handed her a business card and walked back to his cruiser, giving us privacy while still maintaining a professional distance. Jessica and I stood in the parking lot, 3 feet apart, not touching. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. The restaurant's outdoor lights cast strange shadows across her face, making her look older than her 32 years. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm chirped and went silent. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "For what part?" "Brandon. No, I'm genuinely asking. Which part are you sorry for?" I kept my voice level, but there was no warmth in it. This wasn't the time for false civility or comfortable lies. She looked at the ground, at her scuffed heels, at anything but me. All of it. The way I acted at dinner. What I said to you. Not believing you'd actually leave. You thought I'd just sit there and take it? I don't know what I thought. I was being stupid. You were being cruel. The word hung in the air between us, sharp-edged and unavoidable. She flinched at that word. I know. Why? The question came out harder than I'd intended, with an edge of pleading that I hated hearing in myself. Why tonight? Our anniversary? I don't have a good answer. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Try. Jessica looked up at me, and I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was deciding how much truth to tell me, weighing honesty against self-preservation. I'd seen that look before, usually when she was explaining why she'd made an impulsive purchase or broken a promise to attend one of my work events. "I've been feeling trapped," she said. "Like my life is on rails and I'm just going through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat." I saw that waiter and he seemed interested and I wanted to feel desired again. Wanted. Not like someone's wife or someone's employee. Just wanted for me. "So you decided to humiliate me in public to feel wanted by a stranger." "I wasn't thinking about you. I was only thinking about myself." At least that was honest. I gestured toward my truck. "Get in. We need to talk, but not here." The drive home was silent. Jessica sat with her arms crossed, staring out the passenger window. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, everything controlled and measured. Back at the apartment, I poured her a glass of water and set it on the coffee table. She sat on the couch, still hugging herself. I stayed standing. "I transferred half the money from our joint account into my personal account," I said. "I've documented all our shared expenses and assets. I want you to review the list and tell me if you disagree with anything." Jessica's head snapped up. "What are you doing?" "Protecting myself." "You're leaving me? Because of tonight? You told me you're a free woman who can do what you want. So be free." "I didn't mean," she stopped, swallowed. "I was just being stupid." I said something in anger and you're going to end our marriage over it? I'm ending our marriage because you don't want to be in it anymore. You just said you feel trapped. I'm setting you free. That's not fair. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. I sat down in the chair across from her, finally meeting her eyes. Jessica, be honest with me. When was the last time you were actually happy? Not just content or comfortable, but genuinely happy to be married to me? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. The silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, I said. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll make changes. You can make changes. We can figure this out. I don't want to fix it. The words came out calm and certain, and they surprised me as much as they surprised her. But they were true. Sitting there in our apartment, looking at the woman I'd promised to love forever, I realized I didn't want to put in the work to repair what she'd broken. Not because I couldn't forgive her for flirting with the waiter. Not even because of what happened afterward with Kyle. But because I'd seen who she really was in those moments at the restaurant, and I didn't like that person. Jessica started crying again, but these tears felt performative. Strategic. Please don't do this. I made a mistake. One mistake. It wasn't just tonight. You've been pulling away for months. The snide comments about my job being boring. The way you roll your eyes when I talk about work. Coming home late without explanation. Those weren't mistakes. They were choices. So you've been keeping score? Cataloging every little thing I've done wrong? No. I've been trying to understand why the woman I married doesn't seem to exist anymore. She wiped at her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. Maybe she never existed. Maybe you just saw what you wanted to see. Maybe. I stood up. I'm going to stay at my brother's place tonight. Tomorrow we can start figuring out the logistics of separation. I want this to be as clean and fair as possible. You're really doing this? I am. Where does that leave me? Free. Like you wanted. I grabbed my laptop and the folder of financial documents I'd been compiling. In the bedroom, I packed a duffel bag with enough clothes for a few days. Jessica stayed on the couch, not moving, not trying to stop me. At the door, I paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it ended like this. I really did love you. Maybe I still do. But I don't like you very much right now, and I don't trust you at all. That's no foundation for a marriage. Brandon, don't call me unless it's about the separation logistics. Email is better. I closed the door behind me and walked down the 3 flights of stairs to the parking lot. My brother Thomas lived 20 minutes away in a townhouse he'd bought after his own divorce 3 years ago. I called him from the truck. Hey, man, Thomas answered. How was the anniversary dinner? Can I stay at your place tonight? Maybe for a few days? A pause. What happened? I'll tell you when I get there. Thomas had beer in the fridge and a spare bedroom that was barely furnished but clean. He opened the door in sweatpants and an old concert t-shirt, took one look at my face, and stepped aside without a word. His townhouse was smaller than my apartment but felt more lived in somehow. Pictures on the walls, mostly landscapes and cityscapes he'd taken himself, and furniture that matched because he bought it all at once after his divorce rather than accumulating pieces over years. I gave him the abbreviated version of the evening while we sat on his back deck, the city light spreading out below us like a circuit board. Thomas listened without interrupting, the way he always had. Growing up, he'd been the one I'd gone to with problems. Our parents had been too wrapped up in their own dysfunction to notice much beyond whether we were fed and passing our classes. That's rough, he said when I finished. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I should have seen this coming. Nobody sees this stuff coming. That's why it hurts. He took a drink of his beer, staring out at the city. You know why Rachel cheated on me? I'd heard the story, but I shook my head, knowing he needed to tell it. She said I was boring. Can you believe that? 10 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, and I was boring because I didn't want to go skydiving or take spontaneous trips to Vegas. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. She wanted excitement. Adventure. Someone who made her feel alive. Turned out the neighbor made her feel pretty alive. I remember. You handled it better than I would have. Thomas shook his head. I saw warning signs, sure. But I didn't think she'd actually cheat. I thought we'd just coast in an unhappy marriage until the kids were grown, like Mom and Dad did. At least they lasted until we were older. Yeah, and look how well that turned out for everyone involved. He gestured with his beer bottle toward me. At least you and Jessica don't have kids. Makes it cleaner. We were talking about starting next year. Guess that's not happening now. No. I took a long drink of beer, feeling the cold liquid slide down my throat. We'd picked out names. Emma for a girl, Matthew for a boy. Jessica had started taking prenatal vitamins. We'd been looking at houses in the suburbs with good school districts. Dodged a bullet there. Did I? Sometimes I think having kids would have forced us to work through our problems. Given us something to focus on besides each other. Thomas set his beer down and looked at me seriously. You know what Mom told me after the divorce? What? She said staying together for us was the worst mistake she ever made. She said we grew up watching two people who couldn't stand each other pretend to be happy. That's what we learned about marriage, that it's about endurance and obligation, not love and partnership. Our parents had divorced when I was 16 and Thomas was 19. They'd stayed together for the kids until they couldn't stand each other anymore. The divorce had been bitter and expensive and had taught both of us what not to do in a marriage. Mom had moved to Arizona to be near her sister. Dad had remarried within a year to a woman we'd never met until the wedding. I keep thinking I should feel worse than I do, I said. Shouldn't I be devastated? We've been together for 9 years. Sometimes the end of something doesn't hit you right away. Give it time. But time didn't make me feel worse. Over the next few days, as I went through the motions of separating a shared life, I felt lighter rather than heavier. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. The absence of constant tension was its own kind of relief. Jessica sent emails. Long, emotional messages that veered between apology and accusation. I read them carefully and responded with brief, factual statements about lease agreements and furniture division. She wanted to talk in person. I suggested we communicate through email until we had the logistics worked out. A week after the anniversary dinner, I met with a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Saunders and she'd been recommended by a colleague at work. She was in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every version of this story play out. 7-year marriage, no children, no significant shared assets beyond furniture and a lease, she summarized after I'd explained the situation. This should be straightforward if both parties are reasonable. That's the question. Is your wife contesting the separation? She wants to reconcile. I don't. Patricia made a note on her legal pad. In this state, you can file for no-fault divorce after a 6-month separation period. Given that you've already moved out and established separate residences, we can start that clock now. What if she doesn't agree to the terms? Then it gets complicated. But from what you've told me, you've been documenting everything and acting in good faith. That will work in your favor if things get contentious. I signed the retainer agreement and left her office feeling like I'd made my decision real. There was no walking this back now. The legal machinery had started turning. Jessica called that night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. You hired a lawyer? Her voice was sharp with anger. I did. I can't believe you. I made one mistake and you're just throwing away our entire marriage. It wasn't one mistake. And I'm not throwing anything away. I'm acknowledging what's already gone. That's not true. We can still fix this. Jessica, do you even want to fix this? Really? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. You don't want me. You just don't want to lose. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. She hung up on me. The next few weeks established a rhythm. I went to work, came back to Thomas's place, ate dinner, dealt with separation logistics, and tried not to think too hard about what my life was becoming. Thomas was a good host, giving me space when I needed it and company when I didn't want to be alone. You're handling this better than I did, he said one evening while we were grilling burgers in his backyard. How did you handle it? Poorly. Lot of anger and drinking and stupid decisions. I'm just numb. Is that worse? Different. Not worse. I flipped a burger. Did you ever regret leaving Rachel? Every day for about 6 months. Then not at all. Best decision I ever made, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. How did you know you'd made the right choice? Thomas thought about that for a moment. When I stopped thinking about what I'd lost and started thinking about what I'd gained. Freedom to be myself without someone criticizing every choice. Peace in my own home. The chance to find someone who actually wanted to be with me. Have you found that someone? He grinned. Working on it. There's a woman at the gym I've been talking to. Sarah. She teaches spin classes. That's good. You deserve to be happy. So do you, little brother. 3 weeks after the anniversary dinner, I finally went back to the apartment to pick up more of my things. Jessica had been staying with her sister Diane, so I had the place to myself. Walking through the door felt strange, like visiting a museum dedicated to someone else's life. I packed methodically, separating my belongings from our shared items. Books, clothes, the desktop computer I'd built myself, the framed photograph from my grandfather's funeral that sat on my nightstand. Everything went into boxes labeled in neat handwriting. In the closet, I found Jessica's journal. It was sitting on her side, half hidden under a pile of sweaters. I'd always known she kept one but had never read it. Privacy had been important to both of us. I picked it up, feeling the weight of it in my hands. This would have answers. Explanations for things I didn't understand. Maybe even evidence of infidelity that would make the divorce simpler. But I didn't open it. Instead, I set it back on the shelf exactly where I'd found it. Whatever was in those pages wasn't for me. She'd already told me everything I needed to know at that restaurant table. I finished packing and loaded the boxes into my truck. On the kitchen counter, I left a note listing everything I'd taken and everything I was leaving behind. Fair division, just like Patricia had advised. Jessica sent me an email that night. Brandon, I saw you came by the apartment. Thank you for the list. I've been thinking about everything and I realize now that I took you for granted. You're right that I've been pulling away. You're right that I haven't been happy. But I didn't know how to tell you that without hurting you, so I just let the distance grow until it felt normal. What happened at the restaurant was inexcusable. I was testing you, I think. Pushing to see if you'd fight for me or if you'd just walk away. I got my answer. I don't know what happens next. I'm staying with Diane for now and she's helping me look for my own place. I called a lawyer too. Not to fight you, but to make sure everything is handled properly. I hope you find what you're looking for. Whatever that is. Jessica. I read the email 3 times, looking for some hidden meaning or trap. But it seemed genuine. An actual acknowledgement of responsibility without deflection or blame. Too little, too late, but something. I wrote back, Jessica, thank you for being honest. I hope you find what you're looking for too. Let's aim to handle this as maturely and fairly as possible. We owed each other that much. Brandon. The divorce proceedings moved forward with surprising efficiency. We split the furniture based on who had bought what or who needed it more. The lease on the apartment was transferred entirely to Jessica's name since she earned more and could afford it. We closed the joint bank account and split the remaining balance. 6 months after that anniversary dinner, the separation period ended and the divorce was finalized. Thomas threw me a freedom party at his place, inviting a few of our mutual friends. It was low-key, pizza, beer, and a poker game that lasted until 2 in the morning. How does it feel? My friend Marcus asked during a break in the game. Like starting over, I said. Which is both terrifying and exciting. You going to start dating? Eventually. Not rushing into anything. But life has a way of surprising you when you stop trying to force it. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, the city assigned me to a new project, a bridge rehabilitation on the south side that would take 8 months. The architectural firm we were partnering with sent a representative to our first planning meeting. Her name was Nicole Chen. She was the sister of Officer Chen, the policeman who'd helped Jessica that night at the restaurant. The connection seemed too coincidental to ignore, but I'd learned that cities are smaller than they appear. Everyone is connected to everyone else through invisible threads of shared experience and mutual acquaintance. Small world, she said when we figured out the connection during a coffee break at our third meeting. Very small, I agreed. Please thank your brother for me. He was professional and kind during a difficult situation. My brother mentioned that night. He said you seemed like a decent guy in a bad situation. I appreciated his help. Nicole smiled, and I noticed for the first time that her eyes crinkled at the corners when she did. He's good at reading people. Comes with the job. He said you showed up even though you were clearly hurt and angry, and it tells him everything he needs to know about your character. We started meeting for project updates twice a week. The bridge rehabilitation was complex, a 1920s structure that needed modern safety updates while maintaining its historical integrity. Nicole was passionate about preservation, arguing fiercely with her firm's partners about the importance of maintaining the original ironwork patterns instead of replacing them with cheaper modern alternatives. These bridges tell a story, she said during one of our meetings, spreading architectural drawings across the conference table. The craftsmen who built them took pride in their work. Look at these rivets, this scroll work. Nobody builds like this anymore. The engineer in me says we should prioritize structural integrity over aesthetics. The architect in me says they're not mutually exclusive. We can make it safe and beautiful. We just have to care enough to do it right. I found myself looking forward to our meetings in a way that had nothing to do with the project itself. Nicole was sharp and funny, with strong opinions about architecture and even stronger opinions about coffee. She'd bring 2 cups from a local roaster she swore by, rolling her eyes at my defense of the office coffee maker. That's not coffee, she'd say. That's brown water that's been sitting in a pot since dawn. It's efficient. So is eating nutrient paste instead of actual food, but I don't see you doing that. She'd been divorced herself 4 years earlier, married the wrong person for the right reasons, as she put it. Her ex-husband had been a software developer who treated their marriage like a side project he'd get around to eventually. They'd grown apart slowly, meeting one evening to realize they had nothing to talk about beyond their shared expenses and whose turn it was to take out the recycling. Our professional relationship shifted gradually into friendship. Coffee meetings turned into lunch meetings. Lunch meetings occasionally stretched into dinner when we were both working late, ordering takeout to the project trailer and eating while reviewing structural calculations and historical photographs. I told her about Jessica and the anniversary dinner disaster. She told me about her ex-husband and his inability to commit to anything beyond his fantasy football league. You know what the worst part was? Nicole said one evening over Chinese takeout in the project trailer. I kept thinking I could change him. Like if I was just patient enough or supportive enough or attractive enough, he'd suddenly become the partner I needed. What made you stop? My brother, actually. Chen sat me down one day and said, "You are trying to build a house on a foundation that doesn't exist." That's when I realized I was working harder to maintain the relationship than he was. Smart brother. The smartest. Which is why I trust his judgment about people. She looked at me significantly. What did he say about me? That you walked away from someone who didn't value you. That takes strength. 3 months into the project, Nicole asked me if I wanted to grab dinner somewhere other than the project trailer. An actual date, she clarified, just so there was no confusion. I'd like that, I said. We went to an Italian place downtown. Not Marcello's, I'd never been back there and had no plans to return. This restaurant was quieter, more intimate, with actual candles on the tables instead of tea lights and holders. Nicole wore a blue dress that brought out her eyes. I'd worn my best button-down shirt and spent 15 minutes deciding if that was trying too hard. Relax, she said with a smile when we sat down. It's just dinner. I'm out of practice with this. Me too. We can be awkward together. But it wasn't awkward. The conversation flowed easily, jumping from architecture to family to travel plans to the terrible science fiction movie we'd both seen recently and both loved despite its flaws. She laughed at my jokes. I laughed at hers. The waiter was professional and friendly and neither of us paid him any attention beyond ordering food. When I drove her home, Nicole turned to me before getting out of the car. I had a really nice time. So did I. Can we do it again? Definitely. She leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. Good. Because I like you, Brandon Miller. And I think you might like me too. I do, I admitted. Over the following months, Nicole and I fell into an easy relationship. There was no drama, no games, no tests. Just two people who enjoyed each other's company and were building something new from honest foundations. We took things slowly, both gun-shy from our previous marriages. But slowly felt right. A year after the anniversary dinner disaster, I ran into Jessica at the grocery store. She was in the produce section, examining avocados with the same intense focus she'd once applied to everything. Brandon. She looked surprised but not unhappy to see me. Hey, Jessica. How are you? Good. Really good, actually. I'm seeing someone. His name is Mark. He's a teacher. That's great. I'm glad you're happy. You look good too. Different somehow. I'm seeing someone as well. Nicole. She's an architect. Jessica smiled, and it seemed genuine. Life works in mysterious ways. It does. We stood there for a moment, two people who used to know everything about each other and now knew almost nothing. It should have been sad, but it wasn't. It was just the natural end of something that had run its course. I'm sorry, Jessica said. For how things ended. For that night. I've thought about it a lot. I have too. We weren't right for each other. Took us a while to admit it. You're being generous. I'm being honest. We both made mistakes. You walked away first. Because I needed to. Jessica nodded slowly. I understand that now. At the time, I was so angry. Felt abandoned. But you were right to leave. I wasn't treating you well. Hadn't been for a long time. We weren't treating each other well. That's what happens when two people grow apart. Mark and I are in therapy together. Trying to build healthy patterns from the start. That's smart. What about you and Nicole? We're taking things slow. Learning from past mistakes. I hope it works out for you. I mean that. I hope things work out for you too. We said goodbye and went our separate ways in the store. I finished my shopping and drove back to the townhouse I'd rented after leaving Thomas's place. It was smaller than the apartment I'd shared with Jessica, but it was mine. The furniture was all new, chosen by me for my taste. The walls were decorated with photographs I'd taken. The kitchen had the cooking equipment I actually used instead of the fancy gadgets Jessica had insisted on. Nicole was coming over for dinner. I was making lasagna from my grandmother's recipe, the one my mother had given me but Jessica had never liked. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes and fresh basil. Music played from my speaker, jazz, which Jessica had hated but Nicole loved. The doorbell rang right at 7. Nicole stood there with a bottle of wine and that smile that made everything feel right. Something smells amazing, she said, kissing me as she walked in. Family recipe. Better than the takeout we had last night? Way better. We ate dinner on the small balcony, watching the sun set over the city. Nicole told me about her day, about a difficult client who wanted to add a third story to a house with a foundation that couldn't support it. I told her about the grocery store encounter with Jessica. How did that feel? Nicole asked. Fine. Good, actually. Like closing a chapter I'd already finished reading. No lingering feelings? Not romantic ones. She's part of my history, but she's not my future. Nicole reached across the table and took my hand. What is your future? I don't know exactly. But I know it's better than my past. That's a good answer. Later, after Nicole had gone home and I was cleaning up the dinner dishes, I thought about that night at Marcello's. The moment when Jessica had said she was a free woman who could handle herself. The moment when I'd realized I didn't have to accept being treated that way. The moment when I'd chosen myself over a relationship that was making me miserable. Walking away had felt like failure at the time. Like I was giving up or running away or proving that I wasn't strong enough to fight for my marriage. But now, standing in my own kitchen in my own apartment with the taste of dinner still on my lips and the memory of Nicole's laugh still in my ears, I understood that walking away had been the bravest thing I'd ever done. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't making someone pay for hurting you. It's building a better life without them and realizing you don't need revenge at all. You just needed the courage to say that you deserved better, and then the wisdom to actually pursue it. Jessica had wanted to feel desired and free. I'd given her exactly what she wanted by leaving. And in doing so, I'd freed myself. The texts from that night were still on my phone. I scrolled back through the conversation history sometimes, reading her frantic messages about Kyle not leaving her alone. The part of me that had wanted to be the hero felt vindicated that I'd eventually showed up. The part of me that had needed to protect myself felt vindicated that I'd taken my time. But mostly I felt grateful. Grateful that she'd shown me who she really was before we'd bought a house together or had children or intertwined our lives so completely that separation would have been truly devastating. Grateful that the disaster happened when it did, in a way that made the choice clear and unavoidable. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicole. Thank you for dinner. You're kind of amazing, you know that? I smiled and typed back, you bring it out in me. And that was the truth. Jessica had brought out my insecurity, my need to please, my willingness to accept less than I deserved. Nicole brought out my confidence, my humor, my authentic self. The difference wasn't just about the women themselves. It was about who I was willing to be with each of them. With Jessica, I'd been performing a role, the steady husband, the reliable partner, the man who would always be there no matter how he was treated. With Nicole, I was just myself, flaws and all, and that was enough. I finished the dishes, turned off the lights, and went to bed in my own apartment in my own space with my own future stretching out ahead of me. The anniversary disaster had been painful and humiliating and sharp. But it had also been necessary. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well. And I was finally learning how to do exactly that. Story 4.
I brought sandwiches from home for your kids. They can eat this or nothing, my mom said at the restaurant while ordering my sister and her kids full-course meals. My father grinned and said, should have fed them at home. Clearly you're a bad parent. I just said, you're right, and then I left. 5 minutes later they started calling me after they found what I left behind on my seat. The hostess led us to a booth near the back, and I could already feel my stomach tightening. My mother walked ahead with her chin high, my father trailing behind her like he always did, and my sister Ashley chattering about how excited her kids were for their special lunch. I followed with Mason, who was 7, and Harper, who had just turned 5. Both of them clutched my hands, their small fingers warm and slightly sticky from the granola bars they'd eaten in the car. This place looks fancy, Mommy, Harper whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the white tablecloths and the crystal water glasses. It is, baby, I said, squeezing her hand. Just remember your manners. We'd been planning this lunch for 3 weeks. My mother had insisted on Bellissimo, an upscale Italian place downtown that I definitely couldn't afford on a social worker's salary. She'd said it was to celebrate Ashley's promotion at the marketing firm where she worked. Never mind that I'd recently finished my master's degree while working full-time and raising 2 kids alone. That didn't warrant celebration, apparently. Ashley's twins, Ethan and Olivia, were already seated when we arrived. They were 9, well-dressed, and had the kind of polished confidence that came from private school and regular enrichment activities. My kids looked rumpled by comparison. Mason's shirt had a small stain near the collar that I tried to scrub out that morning, and Harper's dress was from Target, bought on clearance 2 months ago. Auntie Rachel. Olivia called out, waving. She was a sweet kid, actually. It wasn't her fault. I slid into the booth, positioning Mason and Harper on either side of me. My mother sat across from us, next to Ashley, while my father took the end seat. The server appeared almost immediately, a young woman with a bright smile who handed out menus. Can I start you folks off with some drinks? She asked. We'll have a bottle of the Pinot Grigio, my mother said without consulting anyone. And sparkling water for the children. I glanced at the wine list and felt my chest constrict. That bottle cost more than I spend on groceries in a week. Just water for me, I said quickly. And milk for Mason and Harper, please. My mother's expression flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Disappointment? Annoyance? She smoothed her napkin across her lap and said nothing. The server nodded and disappeared. Mason leaned against me, his head resting on my shoulder. He did that when he was anxious, seeking comfort in physical closeness. Harper was looking at her menu, her lips moving silently as she tried to sound out the Italian words. "So, Rachel," my father said, his voice carrying that particular tone he used when he was about to say something he considered clever. "Still working at that community center?" "Family Services Agency," I corrected, keeping my voice level. "Same place I've been for 6 years." Right. He waved his hand dismissively. "Must be rewarding work. Helping people who can't help themselves." The implication stung, but I'd learned not to react. My parents had never understood why I'd chosen social work over something more lucrative. They paid for my undergraduate degree with the expectation that I'd become a lawyer or go into business. Instead, I'd fallen in love with a musician named David, gotten pregnant at 23, married quickly, and watched the whole thing fall apart before Mason's 2nd birthday. David was gone now. Not dead, just gone. Last I'd heard, he was in Portland, playing guitar in some band that would never make it. He sent birthday cards sometimes, and occasional checks that barely covered a quarter of what the court had ordered. I'd stopped chasing him for child support after the 3rd failed attempt to garnish his wages. It took more energy than it was worth. "Rachel's doing amazing work," Ashley said, her voice bright but somehow condescending. "It takes a special person to do what she does. I could never. It's so emotionally draining. Someone has to do it," I said simply. The server returned with drinks. My mother poured wine for herself, my father, and Ashley. I sipped my water and tried not to calculate how much this meal was going to cost me. I checked my bank account that morning. After rent, utilities, and daycare, I had about $200 to last until my next paycheck. This lunch was going to obliterate that buffer. "I'm hungry, Mommy," Harper whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "I know, sweetheart. We'll order soon." My mother set down her wine glass and picked up her menu. "The ossobuco here is incredible," she announced. "And the children's menu has excellent options. Ethan and Olivia love the penne with butter sauce." Mason looked up at me. He was old enough to sense tension, old enough to know that something felt wrong. I gave him what I hoped was a reassuring smile. The server came back, pen poised over her notepad. "Ready to order?" "Yes," my mother said. She proceeded to order appetizers, salads, and entrees for herself, my father, Ashley, and Ashley's kids. The total in my head climbed higher and higher. When she finished, everyone looked at me. I took a breath. "Actually, I brought something for Mason and Harper." My mother's eyebrows rose. "You brought food? To a restaurant?" "I packed sandwiches this morning," I said, reaching for my bag. "Turkey and cheese. Their favorite." The silence that followed felt heavy enough to sink through the floor. "You brought sandwiches," my father repeated slowly, as if I'd just confessed to a crime. "Yes." Ashley's mouth had fallen open slightly. She recovered quickly, laughing in that nervous way she had. "Rachel, you can't be serious. We're at Bellissimo." "I'm aware." I pulled out the small insulated bag and set it on the table. Inside were 2 carefully wrapped sandwiches, cut into triangles the way Harper liked, with carrot sticks and apple slices in separate containers. My mother's face had gone very still. Her voice, when she spoke, was ice. "This is embarrassing." "It's practical," I countered. "It's cheap," she shot back. "And it makes us all look bad. What will the staff think?" "I don't particularly care what the staff thinks." "Of course you don't." My father leaned back, crossing his arms. "You've never cared about appearances or propriety. That's always been your problem, Rachel." Mason's hand found mine under the table. I squeezed it gently, trying to transmit calm I didn't feel. "The children can eat what I brought, or they can wait until we get home," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Those are the options." "This is ridiculous," Ashley said. She was using her corporate voice now, the one she probably employed in meetings. "Just order them something from the kids' menu. It's not that expensive." "It is for me." Another silence. This one felt different. Sharper. "Well," my mother said, her tone dripping with false sympathy, "if you'd made better choices, you wouldn't be in this position. But I suppose we can't all be responsible adults." Something inside me went very quiet. "You're absolutely right," I said. She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. I should have made better choices, I continued, my voice eerily calm. I should have fed my children before we came. Clearly, I'm a bad parent. I didn't say that, my mother started, but I was already standing. Yes, you did. I looked at Mason and Harper. Come on, guys. We're leaving. Rachel, don't be dramatic, Ashley said. I ignored her. I gathered Harper into my arms and took Mason's hand. They didn't protest. They could feel it too, the shift in the air, the moment breaking apart. You're making a scene, my father said, his voice low and warning. No, I'm leaving. There's a difference. I walked toward the exit, my children in tow, and I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Ashley say something, her voice rising in pitch, but I couldn't make out the words over the blood rushing in my ears. We made it to the car. I buckled Harper into her booster seat, then Mason into his, and then I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Mommy, are you okay? Mason asked from the back seat. I'm fine, baby. My phone started ringing. I glanced at the screen. My mother. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. This time it was Ashley. I declined that too. Then the text started coming through. From my mother, you left your folder on the seat. If you want it back, you'd better come get it right now. From Ashley, Mom is furious. What were you thinking? Come back and apologize. From my father, this is childish behavior. You're embarrassing this family. I stared at the messages, my heart pounding. The folder. In the chaos of leaving, I'd completely forgotten about it. It was a leather portfolio I'd brought specifically for this lunch, containing documents I'd spent the last 3 weeks preparing. Documents that changed everything. My phone rang again. My mother. This time I answered. You need to come back, she said without preamble. Right now. Why? Because you left your things here, and I'm not keeping them. If you want them, you'll come get them. I'll be there in a minute. I hung up and looked at my children in the rearview mirror. We're going back inside for just a second, okay? We won't be long. They nodded, too accustomed to adult unpredictability to question it. I walked back into the restaurant alone, leaving the kids in the car where I could see them through the window. The hostess gave me a sympathetic look as I passed. When I reached the table, my family was exactly as I'd left them, except now they all wore varying expressions of triumph. My mother held up the folder. This what you're looking for? Yes. Maybe you should be more careful with your belongings. Really, Rachel, leaving things behind like this. What if it had been something important? It is important, I said quietly. She handed it to me with a smirk. Well, here you go. Now, are you going to apologize for your ridiculous behavior? I tucked the folder under my arm and looked at each of them in turn. My mother, with her perfect hair and her expensive jewelry. My father, with his superiority and his disappointment. Ashley, with her discomfort poorly masked as concern. I'm not, I said. But you're going to want to open that folder. My mother frowned. What are you talking about? The folder. Look inside. She exchanged glances with my father, then opened it. The first thing she would see was a letter, typed on professional letterhead, addressed to her and my father. Ashley leaned over to read it too. I watched their faces as they processed the words. Confusion first, then dawning realization, then shock. This is. My mother started, her voice trailing off. A formal notice of intent, I finished for her. From the law firm of Patterson and Chen. My father snatched the letter from her hands, his eyes scanning the text rapidly. His face went red, then pale. You're suing us? Ashley's voice came out as a squeak. Not exactly, I said. I'm claiming what's legally mine. 3 years ago, my grandmother had passed away. She'd been my favorite person in the world, the one who'd always believed in me, who'd helped with childcare when the kids were babies, who'd told me I was doing a good job even when I felt like I was drowning. In her will, she'd left me a significant inheritance. $50,000, specifically designated for Rachel and her children's future. I'd never seen a penny of it. My parents, as executors of her estate, had told me that Grandma had changed her mind before she died. That she'd wanted the money to go into a general family fund instead. They'd said it so convincingly, with such sorrow in their voices, that I'd believe them. I'd been grieving and overwhelmed, and it hadn't occurred to me to verify their story. But 6 months ago, during a casual conversation with my grandmother's former attorney at a community event, the truth had started to unravel. He'd mentioned how specific Grandma had been about the inheritance, how she made him read the clause about me 3 times to ensure it was crystal clear. He'd seemed surprised when I told him I'd never received the money. That conversation had led to more questions. Those questions had led to a consultation with a lawyer. That consultation had led to a records request. And those records had revealed that my parents had deposited my inheritance into their own accounts, then used it to help fund Ashley's down payment on her house. They'd stolen from me. From my children. And they'd lied about it for 3 years. The documents in the folder laid it all out. Bank statements. Transfer records. Copies of the original will with my grandmother's signature. A letter from her attorney confirming the intended beneficiary. And the formal legal notice that I was pursuing full restitution, plus interest, plus legal fees. "You can't do this," my mother whispered, her face ashen. "I already have. The filing goes to the court on Monday." "We're your parents," my father said, his voice shaking with rage. "You're going to drag us through the legal system like common criminals?" "You stole $50,000 from me," I replied, my voice steady. "You took money that was meant to help me provide for my children, and you gave it to Ashley. So yes, I'm going to drag you through the legal system. Because that's what you deserve." Ashley was staring at the papers, her face pale. "I didn't know," she said. "Rachel, I swear, I didn't know it was your money." "Maybe not," I acknowledged. "But you're going to have to give it back anyway. The house was purchased with stolen funds, which makes you complicit, whether you knew or not. My lawyer is very clear on that point." "This will destroy us," my mother said. "Financially, socially. Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? Do you have any idea what these last 3 years have been like for me?" I leaned forward, my hands pressed flat against the table. "I've worked 2 jobs at times to keep a roof over my kids' heads. I've skipped meals so they could eat. I've cried myself to sleep wondering how I was going to pay for daycare or afford school supplies. And all that time, you had my money. Money my grandmother wanted me to have. Money that would have changed everything. We were going to give it to you eventually," my father said weakly. "When? After I'd lost my apartment? After my kids went without? When, exactly, were you planning to return what you stole?" No one answered. I straightened up, folder in hand. "You made me feel like a failure. Like I was less than. Like I couldn't manage my own life. And the whole time, you were sitting on the resources that would have helped me succeed. So no, I don't care about your reputation. I care about my children, and I care about what's right. If you go through with this, we're done," my mother said, her voice hard. "You'll never be welcome in this family again." "I stopped being welcome a long time ago," I said. "I was just too tired to notice." I turned to leave, then paused and looked back. "Oh, and the statute of limitations on this kind of theft is 6 years in this state. So you've got 3 years left before you could have gotten away with it completely. I guess I'm not as incompetent as you thought." I walked out of the restaurant for the second time that afternoon. This time, I didn't feel scared or angry. I felt light. Mason and Harper were playing a game in the back seat, something involving counting blue cars. They looked up when I got in. "All done?" Mason asked. "All done. Can we have our sandwiches now?" "Absolutely." I drove to a park a few miles away, one with a good playground and picnic tables. We ate our sandwiches in the sunshine, and Harper chased pigeons, and Mason showed me how high he could swing. My phone kept buzzing with calls and messages, but I ignored all of them. Later that evening, after I'd put the kids to bed, I finally looked at my phone. 47 missed calls. Dozens of texts. I scrolled through them, watching the progression from anger to bargaining to threats. "My mother, you're making a terrible mistake. Ashley, please just talk to us. We can work this out. My father, I always knew you were selfish, but this is a new low. My mother again, think of your children. Do you want them to grow up knowing their mother destroyed the family?" I blocked all 3 numbers. Then I called my lawyer, left a message confirming that I wanted to proceed with the filing, and poured myself a glass of water. The apartment was quiet. Small, but clean. The furniture was secondhand, and the walls needed painting, but it was ours. I built this life through sheer determination, and I was proud of it. And soon, with the money I was owed, I could make it even better. I could build an emergency fund. Save for the kids' college. Maybe even buy a modest house. My grandmother had wanted that for me. She'd known how hard I was working, how much I was struggling. She'd left me that money as a lifeline, and my parents had cut the rope. But I wasn't drowning anymore. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to my lawyer, adding details I'd remembered during the confrontation. The time Ashley had casually mentioned her generous parents helping with a down payment. The way my mother had discouraged me from speaking to my grandmother's attorney. The lavish vacation my parents had taken to Europe 6 months after Grandma died, when they'd supposedly been financially stretched. All of it was evidence. All of it mattered. Around midnight, there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole and saw Ashley standing there, looking exhausted. Against my better judgment, I opened the door but kept the chain latched. "It's late," I said. "And my kids are sleeping." "I know. I'm sorry. I need to talk to you." "So talk." She glanced down the hallway, as if checking to make sure we were alone. "Can I come in?" "No." She flinched but nodded. "Fair enough." She took a breath. "I really didn't know, Rachel. About the money? Mom and Dad told me it was from their savings." "And you never questioned it? $50,000, just appearing right when you needed a down payment?" "They've always been generous with me. I didn't think it was strange." "Of course you didn't. What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've never had to question anything they gave you because you've always been the favorite." I kept my voice low, conscious of the kids sleeping down the hall. "You got the better school, the nicer clothes, the newer car. You got their approval and their support. I got lectures and criticism. That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Ashley. But it's true." She wrapped her arms around herself, looking younger than her 32 years. "If I'd known, I wouldn't have accepted the money." "Wouldn't you?" "No, Rachel, what kind of person do you think I am?" "I think you're someone who benefits from not looking too closely at where things come from." She was quiet for a long moment. "So what happens now?" "Now my lawyer files the paperwork, and we go to court, and the judge orders restitution." "What if we just pay you back? Right now? We could avoid all the legal mess." "Do you have $50,000 plus 3 years of interest?" "We could get a loan. Refinance the house. That's between you and my lawyer. But I'm not dropping the case." "Even if we pay you back?" "Even then. Because this isn't just about the money anymore. It's about the principle. It's about my grandmother's wishes being honored. And it's about making sure everyone knows what was done." Ashley's eyes filled with tears. "This is going to ruin Mom and Dad." "They ruined themselves." "How can you be so cold?" "I'm not cold. I'm tired. Tired of being the afterthought, tired of being the disappointment, tired of being treated like I'm less important because I don't have the right job or the right life. I'm done, Ashley." She wiped at her eyes. "The kids miss Ethan and Olivia." It was a low blow, and we both knew it. "The kids will be fine. They're resilient." "Are you really going to keep them away from their cousins? From their grandparents?" "I'm not keeping them away from anyone. But I'm also not going to force a relationship with people who think so little of us. If Mom and Dad want to see Mason and Harper, they can apologize and make this right. Until then, we're done." Ashley stood there for another moment, searching for something else to say. Finally, she nodded and turned to go. Then she stopped and looked back. "I am sorry," she said. "For what it's worth. I really am." "I believe you," I said. "But it doesn't change anything." After she left, I closed and locked the door, then checked on both kids. They were sound asleep, tangled in their blankets, blissfully unaware of the adult drama playing out around them. I straightened Harper's covers and kissed Mason's forehead, then went back to the living room. The legal battle ahead would be exhausting. I knew my parents wouldn't go down without a fight. They'd hire lawyers, probably better ones than I could afford, even though my attorney had agreed to take the case on contingency. They'd drag out the process as long as possible, hoping I'd give up. They'd try to paint me as vindictive, ungrateful, a bad daughter. But I had the truth on my side. I had documents and evidence and witnesses. And I had the memory of my grandmother, who'd worked as a nurse for 40 years, who'd saved carefully, who'd wanted to help me build a better life for her great-grandchildren. I thought about her often in those quiet late-night hours. The way she'd always kept her fridge stocked with juice boxes and string cheese when she knew I was visiting. The way she'd slip me $20 sometimes, whispering that it was just for you, honey. The way she told me, near the end, that she was proud of me. "You're doing good work," she'd said, her hand frail in mine. "Helping people matters more than making money. Don't let anyone tell you different." I cried then, hormonal and overwhelmed, worried about how I was going to pay for her funeral on top of everything else. She'd squeezed my hand and smiled. "I've taken care of things," she'd said. "You won't have to worry." I thought she meant the funeral expenses. I hadn't realized she'd meant so much more. The weeks that followed were a blur. My lawyer filed the paperwork, and the legal machinery ground into motion. My parents hired an attorney, as expected. They filed a counterclaim, alleging that I'd abandoned the family and forfeited any right to the inheritance through my behavior. Their lawyer argued that I'd never formally requested the money, so there was no theft, just a misunderstanding about the will's interpretation. It was absurd, and my lawyer said as much. The will was crystal clear. But absurd or not, it meant more depositions, more paperwork, more hours spent reliving every family slight and disappointment. Work became a refuge. At the agency, I could focus on other people's problems instead of my own. I counseled families in crisis, helped kids navigate foster care, wrote reports and filed paperwork. My supervisor, Angela, knew something was going on but was kind enough not to pry. "You seem stressed," she said one afternoon, finding me in the break room staring at my coffee. "Family stuff," I said vaguely. "The hard kind or the really hard kind?" "The kind that requires lawyers." She winced. "If you need time off, just say the word." "I'd rather stay busy." "Fair enough. But Rachel? Don't forget to take care of yourself too. You're no good to anyone if you burn out." I promised I wouldn't, though we both knew I was already running on fumes. The kids adjusted better than I expected. Mason asked once why we weren't seeing Grandma and Grandpa anymore, and I gave him a simplified version of the truth. "Sometimes adults have disagreements," I said. "And sometimes those disagreements take a while to work out." "Like when I fight with Harper?" "Sort of, but more complicated." He seemed satisfied with that answer. Harper was too young to notice much, though she did ask about Olivia a few times. I arranged a playdate with one of her preschool friends instead, and she forgot about her cousin in the way only a 5-year-old can. Ashley texted me occasionally. Nothing heavy, just small things. Pictures of the twins, updates about her job. I responded with brief, polite messages. We weren't close anymore, maybe never had been, but we were still sisters. I didn't want to burn that bridge entirely, not unless I had to. My parents, on the other hand, went silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was almost eerie, the sudden absence of their presence in my life. I'd spent so many years trying to live up to their expectations, chasing approval that never came. Now that I'd stopped chasing, the silence felt oddly peaceful. 2 months after the initial filing, we had our first court date. It was just a preliminary hearing, procedural mostly, but I took the morning off work and met my lawyer at the courthouse. My parents were there with their attorney, a stern-looking man in his 60s who regarded me with barely concealed disdain. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father glared. Their lawyer presented their counterarguments, which boiled down to claiming that the inheritance had been used for family purposes, and that I'd shown no interest in the money for 3 years, implying consent. My lawyer countered with the documentation, the witness statements from my grandmother's attorney, and the fact that I'd been explicitly lied to about the will's contents. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, listened to both sides and then set a date for a full hearing 3 months out. As we filed out of the courtroom, my mother finally looked at me. Her expression was hard to read. Hurt, maybe. Or anger disguised as hurt. "You're really going through with this," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. We'll fight this," my father said. "And we'll win." "Maybe," I said. "But either way, the truth comes out." Their lawyer ushered them away before anyone could say anything else. My lawyer put a hand on my shoulder. "You did good," she said. "Stay strong. This is going to get messier before it gets better." She was right. A week later, I started getting calls from family members. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them had heard about the lawsuit from my parents, and all of them had opinions. Most sided with my parents. I was tearing the family apart, they said. Being vindictive. Airing dirty laundry in public. Didn't I care about family loyalty? A few took my side, quietly. An aunt who'd never gotten along with my mother sent me a text saying she believed me. A cousin who'd also felt like an outsider growing up called to offer support. Their kindness surprised me. But the majority verdict was clear: I was the problem. I stopped answering numbers I didn't recognize. I stayed off social media, where some family members had started posting vague things about betrayal and respect. I focused on my kids, my job, and getting through each day. Mason's school called one afternoon. He'd gotten into a fight during recess, something about another kid saying his mom was bad. I picked him up early and found him sitting in the office with a bloody nose and tear-streaked face. "What happened?" I asked gently, once we were in the car. "Tyler said you were a bad person. He said his mom said so." Mason's voice was small. I told him to shut up, and he pushed me, so I pushed him back. Tyler's mom was my cousin Jennifer, one of the ones who'd been posting on social media. "Baby, I'm not mad at you for defending me," I said carefully. "But hitting isn't the answer, okay? Even when someone says something mean." "But it's not true," Mason insisted. "You're not bad. You're good." My throat tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart." "Are we in trouble? Like, with the family? How do you explain adult dysfunction to a 7-year-old? "We're in a complicated situation," I said. "But it's going to be okay. I promise." I emailed Jennifer that evening, keeping it brief and firm. Whatever issues she had with me, they didn't involve our children, and she needed to keep Mason out of it. She responded with a lengthy message about how I'd brought this on myself and she couldn't control what her son overheard, but maybe if I'd thought about my kids before suing my parents, they wouldn't be in this position. I deleted the email and blocked her too. The isolation was the hardest part. I'd never been particularly close with my extended family, but I hadn't realized how much I'd relied on the background hum of connection until it disappeared. Holidays were coming up, and for the first time in my life, I had no invitations, no obligations, no family gatherings to dread. It was liberating and lonely in equal measure. Harper asked why we weren't going to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving. I told her we were starting our own traditions instead. We'd have our own little dinner, just the three of us, and we'd watch movies and eat pie for breakfast the next day if we wanted. She seemed excited about that, at least. The day before Thanksgiving, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Rachel?" "Yes." "This is Marjorie Chen, from Patterson and Chen. I'm calling with an update on your case." My heart jumped. "What kind of update?" "Your parents' attorney reached out this afternoon. They want to settle." I sat down heavily on the couch. "What are the terms?" "Full restitution of the original $50,000, plus accrued interest at the state-mandated rate. That comes to just over $62,000. They're also willing to pay your legal fees to date, which total about $8,000. In exchange, you agree to drop the case and sign a non-disclosure agreement about the terms of the settlement." "A non-disclosure agreement?" "They don't want anyone to know they're paying. It would be confidential." I was quiet for a long moment, processing. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But they want an answer by Monday. The offer expires then." After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my living room and tried to think clearly. $70,000. It was more than I'd expected to get, even with a court victory. It would change everything. I could pay off debt, build savings, maybe even put a down payment on a small house. My kids could have stability, opportunities, a future that didn't involve constant financial stress. But the non-disclosure agreement stuck in my throat. They wanted to pay me off and sweep the whole thing under the rug. They wanted to avoid public accountability, to preserve their reputation. They wanted to make it go away without ever admitting what they'd done. I called my lawyer back. "What happens if we go to trial instead?" "It's risky. We have a strong case, but there's always uncertainty with a judge's ruling. If we win, you'd likely get the full amount plus interest, possibly more. But it could take another 6 months, maybe longer. And if we lose, you get nothing and you're liable for their legal fees. What do you think I should do?" "Honestly? Take the settlement. It's good money, and it's guaranteed. The NDA is annoying, but you'd have the financial security you need." After we hung up, I made myself dinner and thought about it through the entire meal. I thought about my grandmother, about what she would have wanted. I thought about Mason and Harper, about the life I could give them with that money. I thought about my parents, sitting in their comfortable house, waiting to see if their bribe would work. By the time I put the kids to bed, I'd made my decision. I called Marjorie Chen the next morning, before the Thanksgiving cooking started. "Tell them no," I said. "Are you sure?" "Completely. No settlement, no NDA. We go to trial." "Can I ask why?" "Because this isn't just about money anymore. It's about them facing consequences. It's about the truth being public record. And it's about me refusing to let them buy their way out of accountability. There was a pause. Then Marjorie said, "Okay. I'll let them know. Thank you." Rachel? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. That afternoon, I cooked a modest Thanksgiving dinner with the kids' help. Mason peeled potatoes, Harper set the table with our mismatched plates, and I made a turkey breast that was probably too dry but tasted fine with enough gravy. We watched the parade on TV and played board games, and when Harper fell asleep on the couch with her head in my lap, I felt something close to contentment. My phone buzzed with a call from Ashley. I almost declined, but curiosity won out. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said, though her tone suggested anything but happiness. "Same to you. Mom and Dad are furious. Their lawyer told them you rejected the settlement." "I did." "Why?" "Rachel, they were giving you everything you asked for. Except accountability." "What does that even mean?" "It means I'm not going to take their money and pretend this never happened. It means I'm not going to sign away my right to tell the truth." "You're going to destroy them over pride?" "I'm going to hold them accountable over principle. There's a difference." Ashley was quiet for a beat. "Mom's having a breakdown. She's barely eating. Dad's drinking more than usual. This is killing them. They made their choices, Ashley. I'm just living with the consequences of those choices." "What about me? What about Ethan and Olivia? We're going to lose the house." "That's between you and them. But maybe ask yourself why they spent your money on a down payment instead of being honest about where it came from. Maybe ask yourself what else they've lied about." She hung up without another word. The next 3 months crawled by. Work kept me busy, which was a blessing. The kids thrived in their routines. Mason made the honor roll, and Harper learned to write her name in careful, crooked letters that I stuck on the fridge like masterpieces. I dated briefly, a guy I met through a friend, but it fizzled out when he asked about my family and I didn't know how to explain the situation without sounding like a disaster. Maybe later, when the dust settled, I'd try again. The trial date arrived in February, on a gray Tuesday that matched my mood. I'd taken the day off work and arranged for my neighbor to watch the kids after school. Marjorie met me at the courthouse steps, professional and calm in a way that helped settle my nerves. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. My parents sat with their lawyer, both of them looking older somehow. Ashley was there too, sitting behind them, her face carefully neutral. The proceedings were technical and boring, exactly like legal dramas never showed. Lawyers presented evidence. Witnesses testified. My grandmother's attorney took the stand and confirmed the contents of the will and the specific instructions she'd given him. Bank records were entered into evidence showing the transfer of funds from the estate account into my parents' account, then from their account to Ashley's mortgage. My parents' lawyer argued that the money had been used to help the family as a whole, that my grandmother would have approved, that there'd been no malicious intent. He painted me as opportunistic, as someone who'd suddenly decided 3 years later to cash in. My lawyer countered with my financial records from the past 3 years. Tax returns showing my income. Bank statements showing how close to zero my balance ran each month. Receipts for kids' clothes from thrift stores and discount chains. A letter from my landlord about late rent payments. She painted a picture of someone struggling while family members with resources watched and did nothing. The judge asked me to take the stand. I swore to tell the truth and sat in the uncomfortable wooden chair, very aware of everyone's eyes on me. "Ms. Turner," my lawyer said, "can you tell the court about your relationship with your grandmother?" I took a breath and began. I talked about how close we'd been, how she'd supported me through my pregnancy and divorce, how she'd been my champion when no one else was. I talked about the last conversation we'd had, about how she told me she'd taken care of things. "And when did you learn about the inheritance she'd left you?" "At the reading of the will." The attorney mentioned it briefly, but my parents told me later that she'd changed her mind. "Did you ever see documentation of this change?" "No. I asked once, and my mother said the paperwork had been misplaced." "Did that seem unusual to you?" "At the time, I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly. And I trusted my parents." "When did you discover the truth?" I explained the chance conversation, the subsequent investigation, the awful sinking feeling when I'd realized what had been done. "How did it affect you to learn that your parents had taken money meant for you and your children?" I looked directly at my mother when I answered. It felt like a betrayal that went deeper than money. It felt like they'd looked at my struggling and decided I deserved it. That they'd rather help my sister than me because she was more worthy, somehow. It confirmed every feeling of inadequacy they'd ever made me feel. My mother's expression cracked slightly. She looked away. The opposing lawyer cross-examined me, trying to poke holes in my story. Why hadn't I asked more questions? Why had I waited so long to investigate? Wasn't it convenient that I'd suddenly remembered this inheritance when I needed money? I answered calmly, refusing to rise to the bait. The truth was simple. I'd trusted my parents, and they'd exploited that trust. After several hours, the judge called for a recess and said she'd deliver her verdict the following week. We filed out of the courtroom in tense silence. Outside, my father finally spoke. "You'll never forgive us for this, will you?" "You've never asked for forgiveness," I pointed out. "You've only asked me to forget. We did what we thought was best. For Ashley. Not for me." "She needed help with the house," my mother said, her voice tight. "You were managing. You always manage. I was barely surviving, and you knew it. We were going to help you eventually," she insisted. "We just thought the timing made more sense for Ashley." "So you lied to me. For 3 years." Neither of them had an answer for that. Ashley stepped forward. "For what it's worth, I'm going to pay you back. Regardless of what the court says. It'll take time, but I'll do it." I studied her, looking for signs of manipulation or strategy, but she seemed sincere. "Okay," I said. "Thank you." My parents looked stricken, as if Ashley's promise was somehow a betrayal of them. But they said nothing more as I walked to my car and drove home to my children. The verdict came down a week later. I wasn't in court for it. Marjorie called me at work. She seemed excited about that, at least. The day before Thanksgiving, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Rachel?" "Yes." "This is Marjorie Chen, from Patterson and Chen. I'm calling with an update on your case." My heart jumped. "What kind of update?" "Your parents' attorney reached out this afternoon. They want to settle." I sat down heavily on the couch. "What are the terms?" "Full restitution of the original $50,000, plus accrued interest at the state-mandated rate. That comes to just over $62,000. They're also willing to pay your legal fees to date, which total about $8,000. In exchange, you agree to drop the case and sign a non-disclosure agreement about the terms of the settlement." "A non-disclosure agreement?" "They don't want anyone to know they're paying. It would be confidential." I was quiet for a long moment, processing. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But they want an answer by Monday. The offer expires then." After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my living room and tried to think clearly. $70,000. It was more than I'd expected to get, even with a court victory. It would change everything. I could pay off debt, build savings, maybe even put a down payment on a small house. My kids could have stability, opportunities, a future that didn't involve constant financial stress. But the non-disclosure agreement stuck in my throat. They wanted to pay me off and sweep the whole thing under the rug. They wanted to avoid public accountability, to preserve their reputation. They wanted to make it go away without ever admitting what they'd done. I called my lawyer back. "What happens if we go to trial instead?" "It's risky. We have a strong case, but there's always uncertainty with a judge's ruling. If we win, you'd likely get the full amount plus interest, possibly more. But it could take another 6 months, maybe longer. And if we lose, you get nothing and you're liable for their legal fees. What do you think I should do?" "Honestly? Take the settlement. It's good money, and it's guaranteed. The NDA is annoying, but you'd have the financial security you need." After we hung up, I made myself dinner and thought about it through the entire meal. I thought about my grandmother, about what she would have wanted. I thought about Mason and Harper, about the life I could give them with that money. I thought about my parents, sitting in their comfortable house, waiting to see if their bribe would work. By the time I put the kids to bed, I'd made my decision. I called Marjorie Chen the next morning, before the Thanksgiving cooking started. "Tell them no," I said. "Are you sure?" "Completely. No settlement, no NDA. We go to trial." "Can I ask why?" "Because this isn't just about money anymore. It's about them facing consequences. It's about the truth being public record. And it's about me refusing to let them buy their way out of accountability." There was a pause. Then Marjorie said, "Okay. I'll let them know. Thank you." "Rachel? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." That afternoon, I cooked a modest Thanksgiving dinner with the kids' help. Mason peeled potatoes, Harper set the table with our mismatched plates, and I made a turkey breast that was probably too dry but tasted fine with enough gravy. We watched the parade on TV and played board games, and when Harper fell asleep on the couch with her head in my lap, I felt something close to contentment. My phone buzzed with a call from Ashley. I almost declined, but curiosity won out. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said, though her tone suggested anything but happiness. "Same to you. Mom and Dad are furious. Their lawyer told them you rejected the settlement." "I did." "Why?" "Rachel, they were giving you everything you asked for. Except accountability." "What does that even mean?" "It means I'm not going to take their money and pretend this never happened. It means I'm not going to sign away my right to tell the truth." "You're going to destroy them over pride?" "I'm going to hold them accountable over principle. There's a difference." Ashley was quiet for a beat. "Mom's having a breakdown. She's barely eating. Dad's drinking more than usual. This is killing them. They made their choices, Ashley. I'm just living with the consequences of those choices." "What about me? What about Ethan and Olivia? We're going to lose the house." "That's between you and them. But maybe ask yourself why they spent your money on a down payment instead of being honest about where it came from. Maybe ask yourself what else they've lied about." She hung up without another word. The next 3 months crawled by. Work kept me busy, which was a blessing. The kids thrived in their routines. Mason made the honor roll, and Harper learned to write her name in careful, crooked letters that I stuck on the fridge like masterpieces. I dated briefly, a guy I met through a friend, but it fizzled out when he asked about my family and I didn't know how to explain the situation without sounding like a disaster. Maybe later, when the dust settled, I'd try again. The trial date arrived in February, on a gray Tuesday that matched my mood. I'd taken the day off work and arranged for my neighbor to watch the kids after school. Marjorie met me at the courthouse steps, professional and calm in a way that helped settle my nerves. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. My parents sat with their lawyer, both of them looking older somehow. Ashley was there too, sitting behind them, her face carefully neutral. The proceedings were technical and boring, exactly like legal dramas never showed. Lawyers presented evidence. Witnesses testified. My grandmother's attorney took the stand and confirmed the contents of the will and the specific instructions she'd given him. Bank records were entered into evidence showing the transfer of funds from the estate account into my parents' account, then from their account to Ashley's mortgage. My parents' lawyer argued that the money had been used to help the family as a whole, that my grandmother would have approved, that there'd been no malicious intent. He painted me as opportunistic, as someone who'd suddenly decided 3 years later to cash in. My lawyer countered with my financial records from the past 3 years. Tax returns showing my income. Bank statements showing how close to zero my balance ran each month. Receipts for kids' clothes from thrift stores and discount chains. A letter from my landlord about late rent payments. She painted a picture of someone struggling while family members with resources watched and did nothing. The judge asked me to take the stand. I swore to tell the truth and sat in the uncomfortable wooden chair, very aware of everyone's eyes on me. "Ms. Turner," my lawyer said, "can you tell the court about your relationship with your grandmother?" I took a breath and began. I talked about how close we'd been, how she'd supported me through my pregnancy and divorce, how she'd been my champion when no one else was. I talked about the last conversation we'd had, about how she'd told me she'd taken care of things. "And when did you learn about the inheritance she'd left you?" "At the reading of the will." The attorney mentioned it briefly, but my parents told me later that she'd changed her mind. "Did you ever see documentation of this change?" "No. I asked once, and my mother said the paperwork had been misplaced." "Did that seem unusual to you?" "At the time, I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly. And I trusted my parents." "When did you discover the truth?" I explained the chance conversation, the subsequent investigation, the awful sinking feeling when I'd realized what had been done. "How did it affect you to learn that your parents had taken money meant for you and your children?" I looked directly at my mother when I answered. It felt like a betrayal that went deeper than money. It felt like they'd looked at my struggling and decided I deserved it. That they'd rather help my sister than me because she was more worthy, somehow. It confirmed every feeling of inadequacy they'd ever made me feel. My mother's expression cracked slightly. She looked away. The opposing lawyer cross-examined me, trying to poke holes in my story. Why hadn't I asked more questions? Why had I waited so long to investigate? Wasn't it convenient that I'd suddenly remembered this inheritance when I needed money? I answered calmly, refusing to rise to the bait. The truth was simple. I'd trusted my parents, and they'd exploited that trust. After several hours, the judge called for a recess and said she'd deliver her verdict the following week. We filed out of the courtroom in tense silence. Outside, my father finally spoke. "You'll never forgive us for this, will you?" "You've never asked for forgiveness," I pointed out. "You've only asked me to forget." We did what we thought was best. For Ashley. Not for me. She needed help with the house, my mother said, her voice tight. "You were managing. You always manage. I was barely surviving, and you knew it. We were going to help you eventually," she insisted. "We just thought the timing made more sense for Ashley." "So you lied to me?" "For 3 years." Neither of them had an answer for that. Ashley stepped forward. "For what it's worth, I'm going to pay you back. Regardless of what the court says. It'll take time, but I'll do it." I studied her, looking for signs of manipulation or strategy, but she seemed sincere. "Okay," I said. "Thank you." My parents looked stricken, as if Ashley's promise was somehow a betrayal of them. But they said nothing more as I walked to my car and drove home to my children. The verdict came down a week later. I wasn't in court for it. Marjorie called me at work.